Please welcome Brad Inman, publisher of Inman, to the stage.
Greetings! How are my people? Feeling up? Feeling good? We got some really good stuff going on, I can't tell you. First, I want to share a little family saying we got going on in the Inman family that came originally from my insane, crazy, wonderful wife, Yaz. And it goes like this. And she says it over coffee to me. Bradley, this is heaven. Right now. Right this second. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not next year. Right now. So, for me, gang, right now, this is heaven. I'd like to welcome the upstarts and the startups, the skeptical and the suspicious, the outcasts and the incumbents, the confronters and the confronted, the disrupted and the disruptors, and the stoic and the loud and everybody else. This is the best and the brightest of the real estate industry. You're smart enough to know that change is upon us. You're smart enough to know and you're aware of all the trends. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next several days. We're going to equip you to deal with that change. Now, for the people that are new, I want to tell you what the vision is of Connect and has been for 22 years. Our vision is to improve the real estate industry to create a better consumer experience. Nothing else, that short. That's our one line, one sentence, verbs, a few nouns. That's the vision of this event. And our belief is the people that come all the way to San Francisco, pay all the expenses, share those values with us. But change is upon us. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today is not about all the changes. We're going to talk about those for 3 days. Instead, I'm going to talk about how we deal with those changes. And how I'm going to talk about is the courage we need, the curiosity that we need, and the conviction we need to lead us into change. And the way I'm going to talk about this is going to be a little hard for me, gang, so hang in there, is tell 2 personal stories. One that has had a big effect on me the last 6 months, kind of distracted me, as a small group of you know. And I'd like to share those 2 personal stories and tell you, I think through these stories, true examples of courage, curiosity, and conviction. The first story is that of my dear friend, Randy Tufts. Any of you from Arizona may know about Randy Tufts. He was an amazing human being. Tragically died when he was 50, but said to me before he died, "Hey, no problem, Brad. I lived a full life and accomplished a lot." And he really did. As you can see from this great picture, it makes me sad when I see it. He has the look of a curious human being. He was the most curious person I ever met in my life. But he was also courageous, and he was also full of conviction in his life. And he accomplished 3 things. Many of us are lucky to do one. He accomplished 3 things. The first thing he did as a young activist, he was president of his university back in the day. He was part of the movement to stop nuclear testing in the United States. And that was pretty major. I worked along with him when I had a bunch of hair in my early 20s as a community organizer. Yeah, Saul Alinsky, the whole Obama stuff. And we wanted to stop redlining in cities across America. And he and I had so much fun together. And I loved him from the beginning. And it was a true, deep friendship. But Randy went on with his curiosity. He was a splunker, a cave dweller. And the reason I was reminded of Randy to tell this story today is what went on in Thailand recently and how the cave dwellers were so important to saving those kids. And Randy was just like that. He used to go to the heart of natural disasters. He'd fly there as soon as they happened. And it was curiosity, it was adventure. He used to say, I'm a modern day Columbus, Brad. It's underground or it's in space. But one of the amazing things he did, he was always looking for that big cave. And he was poking around in a part of Arizona near Tucson, and they found a hole. And anybody here that's a cave dweller knows how this works. You smell it, you feel the cold breeze, and then you start hacking away to create a hole enough to slither through. And he had to oil his body. And he slithered through with his partner, and they found what amounted to the largest cave in the United States. Curiosity, courage, conviction. But that wasn't really what this wonderful story of Randy's discovery was about. What was wonderful about what happened next was that he kept it a secret. He kept it a secret for 15 years as he plowed through persuading the Arizona legislature and then Governor Bruce Babbitt to make it a state park. And if he hadn't, people would have gone into the cave, they would have ruined it, they would have stolen stalagmites and all those other things that are thousands and thousands, not tens of thousands of years old. They would have been destroyed. But convicted, and I was his buddy then, so he was telling me every step of the way. And it never got out, and the bill was passed, the governor signed it, and today it's an unbelievably incredible park that you should visit someday. But Randy wasn't done. His third adventure, underground and the sky. He was fascinated in the late 90s by the pictures that were coming back from the different planets. And Europa was one he was particularly intrigued about. And Randy is credited with part of the discovery of the team, the scientists, because he turned out to be a PhD and his heart was in science. The wisdom of crowds. He took the pictures that came back from Europa, and if you knew Randy at the time, he would have 10 of those pictures everywhere he went. It's kind of embarrassing. You'd be sitting in a restaurant, he'd pop up and go to every table in the restaurant and have them leaf through the pictures and ask people what they saw. And after literally doing this thousands of times, when he visited me, he'd ask my kids to go through the pictures, he'd ask me over and over, he asked everybody. And he got 1,000 people to look at these pictures. Or thousands. And based on the collective observation, the wisdom of the crowds, just like this crowd here, we're going to have some fat cats and some experts up here, but the power of this crowd together is smarter than any single expert. And sure enough, what did he discover? He discovered there was an earthquake in Europa, and the greatest discovery, water, and the potential for human life. So Randy was curious, convicted, and courageous. Now, what does that have to do with you? Randy did purposeful work. His whole life was always full of friggin' purpose. He was fun-loving and he was humble, but he was just purposeful, almost sometimes too intensely so. And he never had to apologize for his purposeful work. But it occurs to me that the connection with you all is very much the same. You all should keep your heads high because you do purposeful work. You are not selling opiates for pharmaceutical companies. You're not selling drugs or guns on weekend gun shows. At least I don't think you are. You are helping people find homes and create communities. So have your head high when you go out there. And one of the messages you see through the next 3 days is this industry must become more confident in that and behave more like a service industry, doing a true service, not a sales industry. And we'll talk about that a lot. My next story. This is a harder one. So I have this friend, Mary Odell. Mary Odell, like Randy, is fierce. She's a strong, committed woman, intelligent, savvy, fun, gutsy, sees the moment with danger, could fend off anything. Her and I worked together on a couple different businesses outside of real estate. She was an award-winning filmmaker. She was incredibly creative. She was adventuresome. Much like me and a lot of people in this room, she left home as soon as she could to go out and seize the moment and see the world. Lived all over the world, had an unbelievably successful career, and anyone that met her was struck by her ferociousness and, for me, this incredible commitment to other human beings that were in her life. Mary had this, great professional life, and then she found her partner, and she found him in Marrakesh. I'm going to stop there and take a drink of water. By the way, I insisted with my team, who's incredible, that we have water pitcher and glasses and not bottled waters. Enough of bottled water. But I had to take a break. So Mary met Pascal. Pascal was a tall, smart, creative man like Mary. He was an award-winning chef in the south of France. He owned an award-winning restaurant in Marrakesh, where Mary and Pascal met. They got married. They had a lovely daughter, Mila. Perfect. And then just about 6 months ago, Mary woke up at 2 a.m. in Marrakesh. An intruder was beating Pascal to death. And that's exactly what he did. And Mary, being the fierce, tough woman she is, with her daughter Mila standing in the doorway, fought the intruder off with the broken stick that was a garden hoe that he broke on Pascal's head, and fought him off, saved her life, and saved Mila's life. Mary went through a month, like we all would, of crying every day, trying to put one foot in the other, trying to crawl out of bed, trying to make ends meet, being a smart person, trying to figure out what happened, trying to figure out why me, trying to figure out all the things that come up. And I know many people in this room have had losses, fierce losses, tough losses, so you can all relate. But this is of a magnitude that's hard to imagine. I'll save you some of the gory details, and someday I can tell you more about the crime itself. But the beauty of the story of Mary is watching her recover. Her recovery has been magical. She immediately seized the moment and took responsibility for her family that still exists, as she says. And as she says, I have the memories of Pascal and I have this wonderful daughter, all which is more than she had when she met Pascal. With friends and support, we picked her up. We moved her to the south of France, where Pascal's parents are, where Mila's grandparents are. She got a new apartment. She decorated the apartment. And I saw firsthand in these situations the importance of home. Knowing where you need to be when something happens, the feeling you get when you fly home on Friday or Saturday, you know the feeling, that feeling of being at home. We always say, in my own bed, but it's really about being with your family, with your friends, and it's home. And she knew instantly where she needed to go. Not back to the United States, but to the south of France, where Pascal's parents were hurting and had so much pain. She was immediately selfless, of course, about her daughter, but about her husband's parents, who were obviously painful as well. She went into action. She also had this immense curiosity right away about what her life would be. What it would be in the future compared to what it had been. And I saw that, and I would sit with her for 10, 12 hours a day, talking. One of her great lines when I first sit down with her is she said, and I'm going to use a cuss word, but hang in here. She said, Bradley, don't give me any fucking advice. You don't know what I went through. I'm tired of people giving me advice. But we told story after story. The days have turned here in ebooks and traveling and cities, and we just went on and on and on. I must have told her 100 stories, never giving her advice, but trying to find that story that might help her. But her curiosity about her life is what put her into action. It really propelled her to move forward. The other thing she had was incredible courage. And this is where I bring it home to you all. We're going to talk about change the next 3 days, and we're not going to talk about this kind of change. But Mary had no time to anticipate the change. She had no time to say, what's my plan B in case someone breaks into my house and kills my husband? She was faced with change instantly, in a second. And all this happened in seconds. You have time to anticipate change. You have time to see what's really going on. You have time to be honest with yourselves about what changes are important and what are going to affect your life. You can put into motion a plan right now. You're here because you're curious. The people that aren't here aren't curious enough to find out what might happen to the industry. You are the best and the brightest, and part of that is being intimately curious and finding out what's going on. You can also exhibit incredible courage as you face these changes. If you manage people, you can tell them that you're not paranoid, you're not scared, you're not wallowing in the corner, you're not running away, you're facing that change. Face it, face it, face it. You can communicate what those changes are to get your teams and your groups together to support you in the direction you're taking. And you can be convicted. And at Inman, we spent a fair amount of time lately talking about conviction. How do we get the industry to be convicted about change and improving our communities? And you can be part of that. This is a great moment in time with tons of opportunity for the industry. And this is the time to have courage, conviction, and curiosity. Now, I'm going to leave you on this story with a text from my good friend, Mary. She just wrote me this about 5 days ago. She calls me man. Hey, man, just zipping through the south of France. Wanted to say hello and let you know I'm doing all right today. I'm learning the difference between pain, inevitable, and suffering, which is to be avoided at all cost. And then she wrote, this is hard one, Bradley, but here goes. This is heaven right now, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year, right now. This is it. Love you much, Mary. Go, Mary. Go, Inmanville. Let's kick some ass. Now, right in front of me, thank you, is a big slide that says, don't forget Slido. By the way, we're going to lighten up now, okay? Some of you be mad about that presentation. Why were you so serious? Why did you do this? Why did that? But my community will always tell me. So Slido, let's move to the instructions in Slido. If we could, yeah, there we go. So Slido.com, everyone can open their cell phone right now. Then you enter hashtag Inman. Do I need to slow down? Hashtag senior, that's me. We'll take it slow. Progress? By the way, I may ask my ambassadors to double up so we can get more customers up here. I hate to see all these people standing. Okay, as people know, I have a tradition at Inman. Anyone, let's do this survey right now. Well, we just did it. How many came here in a personal credit card or a company corporate credit card? Typically, it's individual realtors. You may have a company name on it, but you're paying the bill, the company isn't. Or it's entrepreneurs that are bootstrapping their companies. So let's give a nice, warm round of applause to the company credit cards. We love them. And let's give a rousing applause for commission-based people who don't get a paycheck, don't get automatic health insurance, don't get paternity leave, don't get maternity leave, don't get dog insurance, and they're entrepreneurs. How many were here yesterday? Did Slido work? Good or bad? Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay, we'll keep doing Slido. Now, what I'd like to do now, we're doing some interesting things. The reason for this is I was in the UK recently and I saw the television talk show format. And it's where creative, serious people sit around a table and have a conversation and yuck it up and try to kind of go at each other in a fun and interesting way. And since we're going to be talking to some really fun people over the next, couple days, we wanted to make it more of a conversation. We want to pin down the hot shots. We're going to ask them the tough questions. We kind of believe that instead of bringing a bunch of outsiders to tell us about change outside the industry, it's all happening in our industry. Let's bring them here, but let's put them on the hot seat, but not too hot, kind of like a kitchen table. So that's Brad's vision. As we know, half of Brad's ideas work, half don't. So we'll see when it's all over. But my partner in crime the next 3 days is someone that many of you got to know and I've got to know and I have huge respect for, Kalia Peters. So Kalia, if you would come join me. So where should we sit? How should we do this?
I don't know.
Maybe you sit on the wing and I'll sit in the wing.
Okay.
Or maybe you here and me, you there. And I'm like one of those jerks at a dinner party that doesn't just sit.
I have an English husband. We always have to seat people.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh. So what I'm impressed by your background, and I'll let you tell it, but is you, in this whole kind of change of the world, you really represent two parts of it. Yeah. You're an investor, Wall Street, that's your background, but you're also the CEO and president of a real estate brokerage, very noted and respected in New York City called Warburg.
Yeah.
So you wear both hats. And so tell us about that, because you're here because you're smart and you're insightful and fierce, but you also have this incredible, weird
It
background.
is kind of a weird hybrid background. So I got into the industry about 6 years ago. I, up until that point, had a much more sort of conventional business career. I have an MBA. I had spent a number of years at the Boston Consulting Group, where I worked with kind of top companies around the world, talking to them about strategy, about innovation. I'd spent some time in private equity, investing in big companies, and some time in technology. But I came into the industry because my dad, Frederick Peters, remains the CEO of Warburg Realty. And
sorry, Dad, we didn't.
I had one of those, long walks with my dad on a vacation where he was talking about some of the stuff that, I think you've been talking about here for a number of years. He felt that the industry was changing. He wasn't sure exactly what was coming next. And as he described it to me, I got really interested and I was like, yeah, you're right. You're in an industry that's in the midst of a sort of classic disruptive experience. So I said to him, why don't I come in, I'll do a couple months with you and help give you a framework around how to think about that.
Tell me that you said something last night, which I see a lot of times with startups or Harvard MBAs and all these fancy people that come in and think, the industry's not that smart and I'm smarter than you. You kind of came into Warburg with that kind of uppity attitude.
Totally.
Like a lot of these cats do. And then they get into it and they realize it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, so I think I had the classic, usually in this story, it's the son with the MBA who comes in. I just happen to be the daughter because it's the 21st century. I came in and...
What does that mean, 21st? Oh, I guess... Oh, I'm not. Go ahead.
I came in and, I had really been trained, when I got to the office, I came in the door, I kept my head down, I walked straight to my office, I sat down at my desk, I closed my door, and I started typing. Oh my God, my agents hated me so much. They were like, I I didn't understand that this industry is so much about connection. It's about people.
So it's not because they're needy.
Not at
it's
all.
That they like to
connect. And connect is even, to do any sophisticated services job well, I think you have to understand the people that you're relating to.
Yeah.
So people who have excelled in this industry are people who can really build that connection. And that's not because they're cheesy salespeople. That's because they are understanding the needs of the buyers and sellers that they're working with, so they can actually add value to them in the transactions that they're assisting them with. So that was a big learning for me, and I give huge credit to my father and the agents that I work with for being patient with me, and really teaching me so much about the industry. And I mean, the people that I work with are so sophisticated and so smart.
And I kind of think both sides of the industry is equally smart, just smart differently.
Yeah.
Different smarts.
Yeah, so then, the other thing that happened to me was coming with my background into the industry, joining what was at the time that I joined it really quite a traditional brokerage company. My father is a very traditional guy. For any of you who have ever met him, he was almost certainly wearing like a suit and a bow tie.
Yeah.
And then I, together with two partners, both from the commercial real estate world,
right,
ended up creating first a real estate tech accelerator, because I was very interested, having come from the tech and private equity world, around how tech was going to impact and change the industry. And then together with my partners, over the course of this past year, we've actually raised a $40 million venture fund focused on the early stages.
So you know how those cats think too. Let's do this. Let's bring out we don't call them a panel. What do you call people when you invite them to dinner? Your guests?
Our guests.
Let's bring out our guests and then paint the picture in a couple minutes, just 1 or 2 minutes.
Yep.
Your vision for the future. Let's do 5 years out. One of the reasons you're here is because you, for me at least, painted a picture that I kind of get. So let's bring out our 3 guests. So super smart, wicked smart, practical, in the stars, kind of in the trenches, but more like a colonel. That's what we got here. Right, kind of?
That's welcome to dinner.
Yeah, welcome to dinner, my friends. Clea, so paint the picture and let's all jump in and chat about it.
Okay, great. So, the vision that I really have developed for what I think is going to happen in the industry, based on being at the intersection of kind of the investing, venture worlds, and being an operator in the brokerage world, is that I think we're going to see the brokerage business basically split into 3 layers. Though these days I'm kind of saying 3.5. I think, the quote unquote bottom layer is really going to be full tech disintermediation. And that's a word that we love in the tech world. What it basically means is that jobs that were done by humans are going to now be done by technology. So this would be a situation where, every part of the process had basically been templated. It's being done more or less by a machine, but there are human beings involved, but they're not highly skilled human beings. They're trained customer service reps.
So a new home sale, boom. Press a button, buy that new home.
To a certain degree, yeah.
What's part 2, part 3?
Part 2 is what we've already seen in the market with Redfin and Purplebricks. I think we can call these discount or hybrid models. And these are disruptive brokerage models, effectively, where there's a combination of technology and highly skilled humans, but those highly skilled humans are not independent contractors. They're generally salaried employees.
So we got E-Trade, Charles Schwab, and what's the third?
And then the third is the existing brokerage model, which I strongly believe is going to continue to exist in what I generally refer to as high value, high volume, high complexity markets. And that's you guys. And I think that what's going to happen is that there's going to be greater pressure on brokers in that tier to really deliver their value. And 2 points that I would make about why this stratification is going to happen. One is that, about a little bit more than 10 years ago, there was a fundamental shift in what it was we were offering in the brokerage community. There was a shift from being guardians of information to professional services providers. Once our consumers had the same level of information about listings that we did, what they needed from us fundamentally changed. And the reason why this stratification, I believe, will happen, and there will be many fewer brokers in the market, in my opinion, is because we failed to change along with the experience that our consumers were having.
That's great.
And yeah.
So let's.
I'm dying to jump in here.
Yeah, we're going to let you. Let's first ask the audience. Do you agree with Clea Peters' theory? I call him Mr. Slido. Mr. Slido, model of the future. So give us your feedback. In the meantime, go for it.
So I completely agree with your theory, and maybe because I run a team, and so I represent, at our dinner table, I'm that agent. I'm the agents in the room here, and I stratify it 4 ways. So I think what you and I are doing is, I think there's a top 10%, and I think there's the bottom, whatever percentage it is, and then I'm with you on the Redfin Purple Bricks. I think there's this massive group in the middle, like 60, 70%, that you're sort of grouping in with that top 10%. And I think that top 10% is just going to take, it's a highly consultative, highly skilled model, okay?
Yeah.
That's let them all duke that out over there. There's a big gap in the middle. Where I see this going is fewer agents, fewer teams, but bigger teams.
Yep.
Because running a business, as I have experienced, going from a very talented agent to running a business is not easy.
No.
And we're going to start seeing the Mark Spains, the Chris Lindalls, the Ben Kinneys, we're already seeing it, are going to have expansion teams all over the nation. And I also see, to your Purple Bricks and to your Redfin point, sort of more of a bifurcation or menu system of commissions where it's transparent.
Yeah.
I think transparency is the name of the game right now. The consumer wants control. The consumer will be willing to pay for certain things and perhaps even pay us more. They want to choose what they're paying for.
Yeah,
so I'm hesitant to say discount.
I actually think it will be a discount model for most of that 50
Fair
or
enough.
60%
Yeah.
in the middle. I think that people will continue to pay the existing commission structure for the equivalent of a private wealth manager or a family office running your money. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that they will be willing to pay that for people who are offering a level of service that is less than that.
Mike and Jeremy, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Disagree, please. I need someone to disagree.
No, I think there's a lot of good insight in that analogy. If you take the consumer side of that, innovation never comes from doing things cheaper, right? I mean, the iPhone, Tesla, these things come from doing things better.
Yeah.
And what a consumer wants, wherever they end up in that stack, whether they're buying a starter home or buying something complex in New York, they want service on their terms. Mm-hmm. They want things to just work for them. And to your point, they're willing to pay more for that. I mean, a lot of what we're seeing with what people want with Premier Agents, with offers is, do it for me. Let me do it on my terms. But it's not about discount. It's not about cheap. It's about service level and quality.
But is that true even with tens of thousands of dollars in fees? That's a lot of money. It's one thing to pay 12 cents more for paper towels from Amazon, but am I willing to sacrifice tens of thousands of dollars?
The counter to that is you guys are using the financial services model, which is transactions you do every day for small dollars. Most people
what's that concept?
Most people buy a house once in their life.
Oh, gotcha.
And you're not going to cheap out on trying to get that transaction right. What you're going to do, and I totally agree with you, is you're going to pick a level of service that matches you on your terms. Technology that works for you, an agent that works with you, but it's going to be all about, I want to be in control and I want it done for me.
Yeah, and that I think is, you're subtly alluding to the half that I didn't really talk about in this structure, which is the emergence of iBuyers, and the question of whether iBuyers will be a profoundly disruptive force in the market, whether consumers will actually be willing to trade, almost like some value in their home for ease and time.
Mike, you just did some research on that, didn't you?
Well, yeah, and I mean, back to the earlier point, so I'll disagree. I'll disagree with some.
Do you all read his stuff? Yeah. It's so insightful. It's long, but insightful.
Thanks, the one person out there. So change is happening in the industry. That's you can't doubt that. But and I think the thing that's holding us back is not technology, but it's psychology. So if you go to that bottom level here, so I'm agreeing with Jeremy. If you go to the bottom level, if you're looking at high frequency, low volume transactions, that's things like, Uber, Airbnb, if you're in Netflix, right? Things you're doing, that's easy to replace those with technology. And that's why those businesses are succeeding. If you take buying and selling a house, that's it. That's not even on that chart. That's ultra high value. That's the most valuable thing anyone will ever transact in their life, probably. And it's ultra low frequency, like once, twice in somebody's lifetime. So in situations like that, that's very difficult that's psychology at play. That's not technology. Zillow's been around for a decade. iPhones have been around for a decade. We're not waiting for technology to replace agents or people in this process. We have the tech. It's psychology. I used to do a lot of M&A activity at a big corporate company, and we had smart lawyers, we had smart finance people, we had me doing strategy, but we still went to outside firms. We'd still use investment bankers.
You deal with the psycho founder.
Yeah. No, I dealt with the psycho people, but we wanted that form of insurance. And I think people, if they're buying and selling houses, they're still going to want that form of insurance. They're still going to want someone to hold their hand, even if it's the low value end of that. Model.
So. I really had the same vision until I saw a couple of companies which are currently growing incredibly quickly in specifically markets, offering this type of service done in a really sophisticated way. So Homey in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I think those companies, because I've seen
Virgin
them too.
in Atlanta.
No, sorry. I mean, I look at, it's all about the data. It's not my opinion. Everybody has an opinion, but what does the evidence show? And the evidence shows that companies that do that do get traction. But I think it's the early adopters. There are some people out there. The market's so big, you will get some people who try that. But if you're looking to bridge that gap from initial traction to mass market appeal, that's Redfin, that's Purplebricks in the UK. There's one differentiation, and it's that those businesses have people involved.
Yeah.
Via, what do you think? You deal with clients every day.
I think that our research shows that when clients are given a menu, we get higher commissions.
Say it again.
When clients are given a menu and a variable commission structure, we get higher commissions. I'm also seeing, now I'm in Seattle, okay, so iBuyer is never going to look the same in Seattle as it's going to look for all of you in Phoenix and whatnot. I also know that I'm hearing 10 and 12% fees, I believe, that people are willing to pay you all and Open Door and everything to just get their hands off of their. I'm not so worried about us getting paid, and I think there's a small slice who to your point, might take the lower end version of it. I'm not worried about it. I'm more worried about adaption. I think every agent in this room, you need to write down one word today, and it's adapt. It's not about being the sexiest, the smartest, the quickest. It's about adapting in this massive innovation and
does that change your whole business, or is it just how you communicate with clients?
I think that I communicate the message all the time to my clients, and I teach my team to, and I think we need to be on the forefront of adaption almost every day right now with all of this.
Yeah, and if I could add on to that, I think if you think about the buyer and the seller that you're working with, it's about adapting to their changing needs, right? And the analogy we've talked about, which I love, is, the first time you called an airline and you put your frequent flyer number in and you were creeped out that they knew who you were when they picked up the phone, and a few years later you're angry that they don't know everything about your flight when you call in, and the acceleration of that expectation just keeps going. I think it was this week, Google announced they're going to start automatically blocking telemarketing calls on your phone. Right, but now you have an expectation that your phone knows who you are, knows your phone book, knows who's calling, knows who's not. The platform, you expect the platform to do it for you, right? So our consumers expect our agents, when they're talking to one of our consumers, to know everything about them and to be able to respond to what they're doing, whether they talk to you about it or not, right? So that expectation just keeps going. And to me, that's the service level. That is technology plus humans,
Plus-
but it's about a service level.
We're in such a power to the people moment, don't you think? And I look at what Rich Barton started when he started Expedia and then when he started Zillow. This is about consumer power and this transparency that needs to happen, that is happening. We're opening the books to the consumer. Whether they use it or not, I'm not so sure, but I think they like having that choice, right?
Yeah, and to go on that, I mean, I think, because I want to go back, there's another thing I disagree with, great, is about the low cost. I mean, I don't look at these companies as low cost models. You know, if you look at what, you know, companies are doing that are getting traction, it's all about the experience. It's the consumer experience. That's what I believe from looking at companies all around the world that are getting that traction. They don't lead with, hey, we're low cost. You know, it's about providing a superior experience to the status quo. And you can do that in a number of different ways. One is value, providing somebody a better value. All right, it's not cheap, it's just a better value, and everyone's gonna want something different. Second is gonna be the technology and tools to empower that experience. You know, it's 2018, you can have online dashboards, you can have mobile apps, you can have text messaging. People might want it, people might not want it, but being able to provide that to them is great. And then also that sense of kind of 24/7 customer service. You know, I'm not calling my agent hoping they're there and they can ask my questions. I'm you know, going to a call center or going to a team, and I can do that, yeah, like 24/7. And all of that boils up to a better experience. Yeah. So these companies that are getting traction are not, it's not about low cost, it's not about, you know, an instant offer today, it's about a better experience. And they each do it in their own way.
Yeah,
Totally.
but the fact it is instant is why the reason it's a better experience.
Oh yeah, because you don't have to worry about, you know, painting that, cleaning that, getting the kids out for open house, what agent, what price. You get rid of all that uncertainty with certainty. That's a awesome experience.
Did you read my editor wrote a story last weekend about he just bought and sold a home in Brooklyn, and he's a very tech guy. Carl, if you haven't met Carl, he's super nice, wonderful Midwestern boy who's a great editor. He came over from Vice, and he wanted to use all the cool tech, and he tried all the cool tech. And his wife, who's pretty no-nonsense, said, enough of this, Carl. Get a good realtor. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Put away all your toys, and let's get it done. And it was, I think,
But
humbling for
Brooklyn
Carl. We love
is
you, Carl.
a perfect example of a market where brokerage will endure. It is a high value, high volume, high complexity market. It's like, it is, you know, that is a market where you would be foolish to be using a platform because we're seeing multiple bids, even in a market that's soft in New York City broadly. Like, we're seeing complex transactions, we're seeing like complex negotiations. Brokers have an enormous amount of value to offer in
That situation.
Brooklyn. But you know what really sold me on the idea that I do believe that these lower models will take hold is when someone explained to me what was happening it was actually the CEO of Virgin who talked to me about, you know, how their model works. And he told me that in their market at that time, the sales agent would come in, they would meet the seller, they would quote them a price, they would put a lockbox on the door, and they would show up again at the very end to sign the contract.
Yeah.
We opened the door. We opened the door to these models because that is not an adequate level of service to pay someone 3%.
Open house, Sunday 2 to 4. Oh, come on.
No.
Via, tell me this. Can we just quickly, I think that we got some real open door, instant offer experience here. What is your view of that? Do you see consumers that really want to sell in 72 hours?
Here's my skewed perspective from Seattle, Washington, which is a similar market to that. My skewed perspective is that there's a certain amount of markets, and you guys are all talking about it, and I'm reading stuff about it, and it's not so much in my world. I think where it becomes in my world, LA, San Francisco, New York, some of these markets, DC, where it comes in our world a little bit is in estimating value, AI on home valuations, fix it and flip it. Let me come tell you how much what the ROI is on doing XYZ on your kitchen and on your bathroom. I'm just, I think that it's one of the most innovative things happening in our industry, and I'm fascinated by it, and it probably won't affect my world too much.
No, so not really bad. Now, you just did some research on these guys in Arizona. Share that really quickly, and then Jeremy, jump in about what you found, because I think you guys have some consumer insight there.
Yeah, so I'm kind of tracking the data for all the iBuyers, and especially in Phoenix, because that's where everyone's starting. And it's so Zillow's active there. They're as of last Friday bought about 30 houses. I'm sure there's a bunch more in contract. So that's a strong start, over 6 weeks. But The other iBuyers like Opendoor and OfferPad, they're buying houses at about 95% of Zestimate. Zillow's buying about 98% of Zestimate. It looks like Zillow's buying houses that are worth a bit more than the other guys. So there's definitely a sweet spot of activity there. But from what I'm seeing in terms of the buy prices and the sale prices and the listing prices and the time, I mean, it seems like a fair deal to consumers. I don't think anybody's trying to rip anybody off or undercut here. There's a fair deal. Nobody's
So
trying
that FUD about pricing and all that's kind of BS, you think?
I mean, there's no way to A/B test it and know for sure, but you can look at the prices bought and what they get sold for. And I mean, the price appreciation is anywhere from kind of $8,000 in Zillow's case to $10,000 to $14,000 for Opendoor and OfferPad. And it's a difference, but it's the same. Like, I got a really sweet minivan. If I wanted to go to a dealership and trade it in, I know it's worth $5,000. They're going to give me $4,500 for it. It's just part of the process.
It's a great
Jeremy,
analogy.
what'd you learn, Jeremy?
I think back to your point, Zillow offers, it's about choice. So even in a market where there's a lot, it's not New York, right, Phoenix or the other markets, it's a great tool for sellers to have a choice. And what they're picking between, and the vast majority end up picking an agent and list traditionally because they know their options, right? And what they want is they want a service level. There's an option that's like, I'm moving out of state, I need to sell it right now, do it for me, I just want to be done. But there's an option that's, here's a great premier agent who can help actually do most of it for me, right? Which I put those two together versus I want to do a lot of the work myself, I want to try and save money.
So it's still this desperate seller situation. It's not the mainstream person looking for...
It's not desperate, it's just having those options ends up being the best conversation. We actually find the vast majority of people that come through the funnel list traditionally. And we want them to list with premier agents if they can. But what they get is they get options. They know, what's my walkaway price for doing no work? What's my price for finding a great partner and going through some of the seller hassle? And it just depends on their time frame. If they need to match up buy sell, if they're moving, it just depends.
And what's great about Zillow doing that is, it's not like they sat in a boardroom and said, oh, we want to make more money, how can we do that? I mean, that's a good experience for consumers, right? It's providing them options. And that, again, boils up to the point I'm trying to make, which is, how can we offer a better experience? You get into trouble when you think, how can we make more money, right? How can we sell people mortgage and all these other ancillary services when it's not good for the consumer, it's just good for the business.
You know how I see all of this? So Brad and all of you.
Yeah, sum it up for us.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm going to sum it up. 20 seconds. Jason Abrams said this story. You walk in a department store and you have a very nice clerk who greets you and she says, can I help you? And you say no, because we all say no. And we get our whole thing of clothes and then we go to the dressing room. And he said, does it matter if that same clerk is there at the dressing room or are you looking for the right person with the key? And the bottom line is, are we there with the key when the consumer's ready? It's what any of these models, who are we? Are we there with the key at the right time?
Perfect.
So,
That's a good ending.
I will pay for a personal shopper. And I think that's...
Which is actually...
right?
The high end.
I will pay for someone who actually
That's why that top 10% is going to take care of itself. Yeah.
So you were all fantastic. Let's ask the audience, do you like this new format, yes or no? Dr. Slido, Mr. Slido, the question is, do you like this new format, yes or no? Let me ask good, strong showing. Now let me ask you, did you all love, Dr. Slido, you don't have to do this one. Did everyone love this panel? I thought they were really fabulous. Thank you very much.
We don't adapt to change, we create it. We form connections that help us to innovate and to stay ahead of the real estate game. We are community and team supporters, and we find ways to win and win big. We believe that our core values of collaboration, innovation, diversity, and growth are needed now more than ever, and they have enabled us to evolve into technology warriors and solution architects. When you succeed, we all do.
Here to share how design can be used for good, please welcome architect and author John Carey.
Five years ago, my wife and I traded our third floor walk-up in hot and humid Brooklyn for this beautiful co-housing community in urban Oakland. I say that a little facetiously because even as an architect, someone that advocates for housing that builds community, I was terrified of living in community. Let me say that again. I advocate for living in community, and yet I myself have been frightened by it. I'm an introvert by nature. I had all of the preconceptions of what co-housing is, and that's basically a hippie commune. Turns out I was generally right. But the good news is that we found, my wife and I, our community, and now our 2 young daughters, found a remarkable way to live together in community. This is a tiny little site in the Temescal neighborhood of Oakland, a stone's throw from tech buses. So you can imagine the appreciation that happened mere weeks after we moved in. This community is home to somewhere between 25 and 30 people, depending on when kids are at college and so on. And it has about 8 units of housing, ranging from 2 rental studio apartments to a 4-bedroom house. The age range is our 2-year-old daughter, who is the reigning youngest for just a couple more weeks, all the way up to an 80-year-old single woman. So it's really and truly intergenerational. There's also 3 mixed-race couples who live in our community. It's a beautiful place to live. We share a couple of meals a week. They're voluntary. You can show up with a to-go container and leave, or you can sit down and have a nice conversation for up to a couple hours. It's really extraordinary. Now, mind you, we traded that unit in Brooklyn where we knew 1 person in our 60-unit building, and we entered into this instant community of 30 people. And it has made me wonder, why don't more people live like this? It turns out there's about 160 co-housing communities in the United States. That might sound like a lot, but there's about 700 in Denmark. So we share these meals, we share in a community, and it has actually reminded me about why I went into architecture in the first place. This place that was designed to build community, and yet most architects will never engage in building this type of housing, has returned me to the roots of why I went into architecture. I did because I believed architecture and design was about creating spaces for people to live their best lives. And I've labeled this, or I've described this as design's unique ability to dignify. It can make people feel valued, honored, cared for, seen, and respected. So just a couple of blocks from our house, we see this. We see the signs of prosperity in the Bay Area represented in, an aging train system. But nonetheless, we see encampments lining the streets under underpasses, lining the streets along abandoned lots. And it is difficult to see, but it is infinitely more difficult to experience, something that I have never had the misfortune to experience. My daughter, who's about 4.5 years old, frequently asks about those people, about those blue tarps, about those tents, about those blankets that we walk straight by. And I believe it is the questions that our children ask that we don't have answers to that define us. Now, you all are in an industry that puts people into places to live their best lives. We collectively, as a society, need to figure out how to reach many more people, how to develop more transitional, supportive, and most importantly, permanent housing. And I believe we can do so by remembering that each person deserves dignity. Because dignity is to design what justice is to law and health is to medicine. Again, in the simplest of terms, it's about reflecting back to people that they have value. Now, after I wrote a book about this work, I returned home the same day from my book tour. I returned home the same day that Oakland, with a lot of fanfare, was cutting the ribbon on a development for homeless people in Oakland. They had procured 40 of these tough sheds, the kind that you see and that they bought at Home Depot, the kind designed to house power tools and lawnmowers, to house human beings. I had a chance to report on this for the San Francisco Chronicle, and I interviewed a great many people in the adjacent encampments, some of the people that were being brought in to provide social services, as well as some of the people that were charged with building these tough sheds or installing them. And what I found is a lot of great intention. A lot of good intentions, however, do not create dignity. The people who were being asked, and in some cases pushed or forced to live in this housing, knew that these spaces were not designed for them. We've all been in spaces where we've sensed that it was not designed or built or created for us, and we know how demeaning that can feel. The good news is there are viable models for how to do this work better, and all of them currently fall under the Housing First model that you see advocated across multiple sectors and across multiple government agencies, including HUD. So Housing First has multiple principles, just a few of them. The first is that homelessness is a housing crisis. It is not a personal crisis for those people. It is a crisis of our inability to provide shelter, whether that's transitional, supportive, or what Housing First calls for, permanent housing. The second principle of Housing First is that permanent housing is key. Moving people around is traumatic. Moving people from supportive into permanent housing sends the message that it is conditional. And yet housing, as I'm sure all of you believe, absolutely should be a human right. Shelter should be a human right. And rather than setting up conditions where people have to go through screenings or submit to social services or other things, the belief is that everyone is housing ready. Everyone deserves permanent housing right now. It's just our collective failure to have that housing available. So I want to walk you through 3 quick examples. The first is this cottage community in Dallas, Texas. It is the work of a coalition of social service agencies, foundations, and designers that came together to design housing for the 50 most chronically homeless people in Dallas. It's a beautiful project. And in this project, I had a chance to interview multiple residents, including one named Gregory Filan, about a 55-year-old man who had drifted from town to town and literally lived on the streets for upwards of 30 years. When Gregory entered the cottages at Hickory Crossing, as they're called, he showed up with little more than the clothes on his back. And what he found was this beautiful 400 square foot space for him. I asked him to describe what that space meant to him, and he started to talk about the key in his pocket. And I thought, I'll just let him go with this. But he talked about the sense of security that that key brings, the ability to lock that door behind him. That sense of security and stability is something he had lived without for decades. When he showed up with little more than the clothes on his back, he found everything from a crock pot and a stove and a refrigerator to a toothbrush and toothpaste awaiting him. When I asked him to describe how that place made him feel, he said simply, it's like heaven. Now down south of here in Los Angeles, Skid Row is one of the highest concentrations of homeless people in the United States. the remarkable work of the Skid Row Housing Trust, which has created over 2,000 units of housing, partnering with top-tier architects like Michael Maltson Architecture, and this really innovative use of prefabricated construction. They are providing housing at an extraordinary level, and yet you walk down the streets of Skid Row and you realize how much more need there is. It's a beautiful, light-filled, colorful space, and it is such a departure from the streets where all of these people have come. When I asked the CEO of Skid Row Housing Trust to describe what it means to him, he says, "I don't give a shit what it means to me." He said, "I want to tell you what it means to the doctors, the health professionals who have based their clinic in the ground floor of this space. The city and county of Los Angeles has a health and human services clinic because they see housing as directly related to health outcomes." That's a pretty big endorsement of the kind of work that you all do. And the final project I want to show is the Richardson Apartments in the Hayes Valley neighborhood of San Francisco. It's about 120 units of housing. It's built, as you can see, within just a short distance of City Hall. It's a beautiful structure, beautiful units, beautiful courtyard spaces. But the really interesting part about this is that, sure, this is about a $26 million construction cost, but it is saving the city of San Francisco $2.1 million annually by keeping people off the streets, cutting down on the reliance of social services, cutting down on police and emergency room visits. And this has real potential from a business standpoint. It has potential to save society money. So whereas we may be all part of this society that has created this environment where people are on the streets, we have a lot to gain by fixing it. The market rate housing across the street and kitty corner from the Richardson Apartments have shown zero impact on their value because of their proximity to supportive housing. Interestingly, because of the actual year where the Richardson Apartments were built, many of the units and many of the finishes, et cetera, are nicer than the market rate housing across the street in kitty corner in these market rate housings. And so I think this is a beautiful message to be sending these people who have been living on the streets, that their lives have value. So I'm new to this conference. I'm new to this industry. I'm a one-time home buyer at best. And yet when I dug into a little bit of the work that you all have done, I came across this legendary Los Angeles real estate agent and was intrigued by the work that he and a group of others did at another Inman conference. And they came up with something together called the Parker Principles. And there's 12 of them, and most of them relate to your industry, understandably, but there's a couple that relate to your industry and to all of us. One is to fight for more available housing, fight for more permanent housing for some of the most marginalized people in our society. They need you to fight. They will welcome the fight. They will welcome your support. And the second is to make our communities better places, not just for those marginalized people to live, but for all of us. That's the beauty of good design. That's the beauty of permanent housing. That's the beauty of community development. It can lift all of us. There's this beautiful tree that hangs these gorgeous flowers for several weeks of the year into the courtyard of our co-housing community. And I often sit on this little wooden bench with my daughters, and we just look at this courtyard. Sometimes it's empty, but often it's bustling with people passing back and forth, borrowing a cup of sugar. And I think to myself, wouldn't it be amazing if all of those people living just a couple of blocks away on the street could share in something like this, could have a place that makes them feel so good, so human, and so alive. It's the future I want for my daughters. I think it's the future that we collectively need to want for every human being. And I welcome you to join me in this fight for for creating permanent housing for every person. Thank you so much.
So gang, raise your hand if you have a seat next to you, and any ambassador that wants to be a super ambassador and give up your seat, you will be praised until you're dead. Raise your hand. If you're using your seat for a purse, I love that, but that purse is not that as important as another human being. Raise your hands all at once if you have a seat next to you. Raise it, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. So folks, there's a few seats, come on up, raise your hands. Any seat at all? Seat, raise your hand, keep it up. We've got a seat right here, right in the front row for Gary. We got a seat back here. Raise your hand. Come on, we got some over here, right? We have 2 right here. No saved seats, gang. Can't save seats. So there's 3 right here. Bathroom, no excuse. You lost your seat. My brothers and I, football game, you'd lose your seat if you went to the bathroom. Raise your hand. Seats. Seats. Cozy up. Oh, look at my ambassadors. They're jumping, giving up these front row skyboxes for the customers. I love it. Anybody else got a seat anywhere? Purses aren't seats? Okay. Rock and roll.
Coldwell Banker's culture is unique because this brand has always been about the right things. Focusing on the right things, growing agents, growing your business, and that's what's made the difference in my company and my success. I attribute much of that success to the mentorship, guidance, and support that I've gotten from the brand, and that is what sets this brand apart.
Here to provide her take on disinformation and how it's affecting your online experience, please welcome Renee DiResta, founder of Haven.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here today. I am not going to say a word about real estate for the next 20 minutes. I've been watching all the talks prior to mine backstage. My mom and my grandfather are actually both in real estate, so it's been really fascinating to just be listening. But what I work on is internet misinformation, and so I was asked to come and to tell you a little bit about disinformation on the internet and the way it's affecting everybody. So I'm going to start by saying something really obvious, which is something is wrong on the internet. And as a techie in San Francisco, this is something that those of us who kind of build the internet have been thinking a lot about recently, particularly since what came to light following the 2016 election. So no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, I think we can all agree that there's been a remarkable erosion in trust and in truth over around the last 5 years or so. And it kind of culminated in post-truth being named the 2016 word of the year by Oxford Dictionaries. So what people like me do is we study how false information spreads on the internet. It might be surprising that this is actually a job. I'm kind of continually amazed by that. But we look at the different types of post-truth content. So we look at misinformation, which is the kind of stuff that you might have gotten like in a chain letter from your grandma back 20 years ago. We look at disinformation, which is information that's false that's spread deliberately. So this is where we look at things like the content that came out of Russia during the 2016 election cycle. And then we look at propaganda, which is information with an agenda. Whether it's true or false, oftentimes it's just, there's a kernel of truth in it, but it's presented in such a way as to be misleading. It's really the battle for hearts and minds being fought on the internet. So how did we get here? Well, there are structural issues, and that's what I'm going to talk about, the kind of technological issues, but I'm also going to talk about some of the societal issues that are intersecting with the technological that are leading us to this post-truth era. So, how many of you here have a Facebook account or are active on social media? I imagine pretty much everybody, right? You're all, especially if you're running a business or a small business, it's a really phenomenal way to reach people. And that's because what we started to see was this remarkable consolidation in the internet, starting with the era of social media. Prior to that, there was a lot of misinformation on the internet because everybody had blogs. How many of you, show of hands here, had a blog, maybe a GeoCities page back 20 years ago if you're around my age? So you think about this in terms of, there has always been fake things on the internet, there's always been propaganda out there, but the remarkable impact of social media is that it consolidated almost everybody in the world, 2 billion people, into one place, making them remarkably easy to reach. So this is phenomenal if you're running a business and you're running ads, your ability to reach people. But on the flip side, it also creates a standing audience for propagandists and for people who want to do harm. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the interesting cycle that underpins how social networks operate, right? The incentive structure of the business. So all of the social networks compete with each other, not because they have the same features, but because they're all attention brokers, which means that the way that they make money is by keeping you on the site, because they're powered by ads. So in order to serve ads, they have to have an audience. So this is where, even though what you do on Facebook, what you do on Twitter, and what you do on YouTube are 3 totally different things, they're all competing for a share of your time and a share of your attention. So in order to win that race, the platforms need to know about you. And they need to know about you not only to target you with ads, but they also need to know about you to decide what kind of content they're going to show you. So there's this dual targeting that's going on. Sometimes it's from an advertiser. Sometimes maybe you're even the one running the ad. I know I've run Facebook ads and they're remarkably effective. But the platform learns about you in order to suggest content. And by providing you with content that you want to see, it keeps you on site. And when it's keeping you on site, it's monetizing your attention, and it's also learning about you. So it's understanding what you're clicking on, what you're doing. Most of the internet has tracking pixels, so even if you're not actually on the network, it's able to take into account things that you've done, sites you've visited, actions you've taken. So privacy advocates call this surveillance capitalism, but the idea is that we're basically monetizing attention, and in order to do that, we have to understand great deals of information about people. Now the problem is when they're suggesting content to keep you on site, there's a couple of unintended consequences. One of those is polarization, because nobody's going to show you, if you're a liberal, Fox News. They're not going to serve you that. Similarly, if you're on the conservative side, they're probably not going to give you CNN. And so what you wind up with is this filter bubble where you're constantly shown information that's going to make you feel good or emotionally resonate with you. And unfortunately, oftentimes what it's giving you is things that are going to make you angry. And if you click on that, it understands that you've just engaged with that content, and so it's going to serve you more of it. And so the side effects that we see from this are polarization, people really not sharing any kind of same sense of underlying truth, and sometimes radicalization, because oftentimes people are being served content, particularly on YouTube, that drives them down the path of conspiratorial content, or sometimes we see people being radicalized in the form of terrorism and other types of extremism. So the power to influence opinions increasingly lies with those who can most widely and effectively disseminate a message. And this is what the propagandists realize. They have this huge standing audience. They can target people remarkably well. And so the real battle is just to get your narrative out there. I'm sure anybody who's ever run a business has experienced this. You really want to reach as many people as possible. So one of the ways that we're seeing people do this, particularly bad actors, is with bots. So with automated accounts that aren't real, but they look real. And so they go on Twitter and they amplify a message over and over and over again. And the effect of people who are being targeted with that content, seeing it constantly reinforced, it creates what's called a manufactured consensus. The idea that there's an opinion that's very, very popular and many, many, many people are talking about it, when in reality, these are bots controlled by a foreign actor, a domestic ideologue, or just somebody with an agenda. So the effect of all of this is that disinformation is screwing up your reality by elevating what's popular, manufactured popularity oftentimes, over what's true. And we can sit here and we can debate about what is true, what is not true, but ultimately, there are things that we can all agree on, right? The earth is round. If you go on Facebook, that's a matter of debate. So I've talked about some of the tech issues, but I also want to talk about where this intersects with society, right? How our own societal fractures enable, this is, by the way, this is a meme that the Russian IRA, Internet Research Agency troll accounts posted on a page called Army of Jesus, which had over 100,000 followers. So the content that we saw from Russia, really, it didn't go after explicitly political content. Some of it did, but the vast majority went after issues that it knew were deeply contested in American society. So they find these wedges and they get in there. So the overwhelming majority of the content pushed out by Russia was related to race. It was related to police brutality. It was related to how we feel about police officers and law enforcement. It was related to LGBT issues. It was related to secession, to separatism, to Southern culture and the Confederate flag. And they timed all of these campaigns to tie into things that were happening in the news. So there would be one precipitating event, sometimes a shooting, sometimes a protest, and then the content would pile on and it would be targeted at people who had expressed an interest in that content previously. And so it was a remarkable campaign in that it grew to pages of 400,000 people who were liking and following this content and had basically unwittingly opted in to constant propagandizing from a foreign intelligence service. We see this in American politics. It's not just Russia doing it. Russia is using the social ecosystem that I was describing because it's an effective way to reach people. But we also see domestic trolls doing the same thing. One of the campaigns that we saw was during the special election for in Alabama, right? Roy Moore, Doug Jones, regardless of how you felt about it, we started to see campaigns where trolls that had assumed the sort of stolen valor identities, there was one that claimed to be a Navy SEAL, was out there on Twitter saying that he knew his wife had been told that Roy Moore's accusers had all been paid. And this tweet from an anonymous account that just claimed he was a Navy SEAL was picked up by a right-wing blog and embedded in a story, and that story was then, so unverified, unvetted, that story was then picked up and run by the rest of mainstream media. And so we had this narrative that Roy Moore's accuser had been paid, largely taken from an unvetted piece of content on social media. Now, of course, the media is extremely culpable when it comes to this type of embedding of nonsense and not fact-checking, because that's them not doing their job. But the problem is that there are certain very polarized factions of media on both sides that grab these tweets and really just use them to sell a story and push a narrative. And then the third area that we're seeing this now is actually in business. Business is the latest battleground. So one of the things that we see is we see major companies being targeted. We see Starbucks being targeted by domestic trolls. They had that very real, terrible situation where those 2 black men were arrested in Philadelphia. What happened following that was a very real outcry on social media. What happened following that was trolls pushing a narrative about reparations coffee and offering up fake coupons that people could take to Starbucks to get their free coffee. That, of course, was not real in any way, but it was racist trolls deciding that they were going to exploit societal divisions in their own country by creating a plausible social media follow-on campaign to a very real incident. So Starbucks, of course, has to think about how do you respond when that happens. And then another thing that is probably more directly relevant to a lot of folks in this room, how many of you shopped on Prime Day? Yeah, how many of you have ever bought something on Amazon? Right, everybody in America at this point. Amazon reviews are remarkably manipulated. Now, they'll tell you that it's 1% of all the reviews on Amazon. Maybe it's a very small percentage. That's still millions and millions of reviews. And what we see when we do our research is we see sellers who broker fake reviews. They will actually go into Facebook groups. They will coordinate with people. They will give them the product for free in exchange for a 5-star review. They will send the money back via PayPal. So the person has a verified purchase from a verified Prime account that's left dozens and dozens of reviews, and they're all fake because the reviews are incentivized where you get your money back in exchange for the 5-star review, and then there are tens of thousands of people in these Facebook groups. And so we have Amazon trying to battle misinformation on its own site, which is being coordinated on Facebook, which technically is not responsible for it either. And then Google, which serves up Amazon results for top-rated products when you search for a term. So you want to find an electronics product, you type in Bluetooth headphones, Google is going to show you the top-rated products on Amazon. And the top-rated products on Amazon are top-rated because they've been manipulated through fake reviews coordinated in Facebook groups. So this is the kind of stuff that we're looking at as we try to think about the systemic ways in which disinformation, misinformation, manipulated narratives, manipulated reviews are spreading across the internet. So what can you do? If you're running a business, it's really tough, right? Sometimes something happens, you get targeted, and we're constantly talking to the tech platforms about ways for small businesses to have more recourse when they become the victim of troll attacks, or when they become something inadvertently happens, and all of a sudden hordes of fake reviews pour in, as happens, and as the culture wars have moved to target small business owners as well. But on the political front, we're really starting to ask people to think before they share, particularly before 2018. Investigate the narrative. So anyone can get sucked into these stories. Anyone can get sucked into this environment of misinformation online. So before you share that sensational story that Facebook has pushed into your feed, take a second and actually stop and think about it. Tell people when you see them sharing information that's known to be false. It's been part of the internet culture for a long time to just ignore it, just let it go by. But we're starting to see that maybe it actually makes more sense for trusted people to connect with their friends and family and try to point out that information is heavily biased or misleading or just downright false. And then look at the speaker. When people engage with you online, because one of the things that we also saw with the Russian investigation is they were actually DMing people. They were straight up direct messaging. They were reaching out to individual people who they saw as leaders in their community, asking them to set up rallies, asking them to take action in the real world. So think about who's talking to you online and realize that we're at a point where, unfortunately, as the platforms work to get a handle on this, there are still a lot of fake accounts out there, a lot of misinformation out there, and it's important to be much more skeptical of what you're dealing with online right now. This is a quote that I like. The best weapon to defend against fracturing reality isn't a password or a firewall. It's stronger and more adaptable. It's the ability to think critically, to call out false narratives within our community, to press for facts. There are very smart people at Google and Facebook and Twitter that really are devoting a lot of time and energy to this. And it's important that we use our voices to hold them accountable. So when you are on Twitter and you do encounter misinformation or trolls or spam bots, reporting, demanding accountability, saying you need to do better for me to continue to use your service. The same thing with Amazon. You need to get a handle on the fake reviews because we, the customers, are the ones who are being manipulated. And for 2018, we really need to own this narrative, right? We need to own our own ability to make an impact here, to not fall victim to the kind of disinformation and misinformation that we are already beginning to see getting pumped out. So follow a diverse set of news sources, be skeptical of what you read and watch. We're the ones who share these stories, we're the ones who editorialize in our own posts, and the Russians put content on the page, but that content was then shared by Americans. So in this day and age, we're all publishers, and that means that we all have responsibility. And above all, we must have the courage to unflinchingly pursue the truth, even when it leads us to confront our biases, to confront people in our community, to have uncomfortable conversations, because that's how we're going to be able to stop disinformation from screwing up our reality. Thank you so much.
With design in our DNA and technology at our core, Compass is committed to improving the real estate experience for agents and their clients. Now we're taking that commitment one step further. Connected, configurable, and illuminating. Introducing the Real Estate Sign, reinvented. Only at Compass.
So the really cool thing about using the Realtor.com leads within Kendrick Realty is that we're able to take agents and bring them full force into real estate as their career from the get-go. Our agents are able to come in and immediately have a client base where they can, within 3 to 6 months, start selling those 3 homes a month. We brought in an agent who had gone to 4 different brokerages and just couldn't find the right system for her, and came to Kendrick Realty, and she already has her first house under contract.
Ready to learn how to pivot like a champion? Please welcome Keller Williams founder Gary Keller to the stage.
Where are we going? Right here? Where are we sitting?
Is that okay? That's good.
All right.
Oh, do you want to be near here? Here. Gary brought his flip chart.
I did.
It's a special one. So, Dr. Slido, ask our wonderful audience one word to describe Gary Keller, and then time for you and I to chat. By the way,
Be sure my wife is getting in on that.
yeah, well, you got plenty of fans here. Thank you very much for doing this.
You're more than welcome.
The enthusiasm by our audience. Some love you, some aren't so sure, and a few don't know you. But
I feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with that, actually, and then you're going to kind of share your vision like Kalia did.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to the crowd. But who is Gary Keller? Just give us a little.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By the way, you're a leader, innovative, and a visionary, according to our audience.
Wow. How do you? I don't want to waste time talking about that. What do you want to know about me?
Well, what's one thing? Is it true you're going to put realtor on your gravestone?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. That says a lot.
Someone asked me once, professionally, right, what I wanted to my legacy, and I said I want to die being a realtor. I want it to say on my headstone I was a realtor. I have a degree in real estate, right? Got out of college in the late 70s, was one of the first people to have a degree in it, was a broker at 21, and I've never gotten out, right?
So you love real estate, right?
Yeah, I sold 6 houses my first month in a city I'd only been in once. By the time I was 26, I was a vice president of a large real estate company in my market. No, I love this business.
Yeah.
It's a great business.
And let's now jump into lay out. I think my question to you on this one is lay out where you think it's going, because we got competing theories on the future that we're going to really bear down on the next couple of days, and I think yours is important. And we got you a couple magic markers. We got an eraser.
Awesome.
And we got a film crew that's going to zoom in on it so that they can
do this so you can see it.
And we're going to put a clock on you, gang, in the back of 10 minutes.
15.
10. 10. Okay. But you're going to talk for 45. It's just 10 on this part.
Yeah, so the question you asked me was, where's the industry going?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I thought about that, and I kind of want to diagram it, and then we can talk through that.
Let's do it.
So if you think about any business out there, right, there's three paths it can go. It can go this way, it can go this way, and it can go that way, right? So there's three phases to building a business in any industry. There's this phase, and then there's one of those three.
And is that an individual business or the industry you're
This is a business inside of an industry.
Okay, gotcha.
So what happens is you have this period of what I would say trial and error.
Yeah.
So businesses start business, go out of business, go into business. They try all kind of things, and at some point, the people that have made it get to this point. And then at that moment in history, and it shows up for every business, this is where the real innovation occurs.
Where is Compass and EXP? Are they in that first big circle?
Well,
I don't mean to throw you out there.
No, you didn't at all. By the way, no one's in the circle yet.
No one's in the circle.
So I just had to think about that for a second.
I'm not in the circle? Damn.
But you can be in the circle.
Okay.
I'm going to put Brad right there. You're in the circle.
Hey!
No, by the way, I believe that every firm, whether they've been in business for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, I think all of us are right there.
Gotcha.
So when I talk about, and I've made the statement that in February, I got on stage and said that in the next year you won't recognize the real estate industry, I wasn't kidding. And what's interesting is the amount of change that we're all feeling is real and palpable. Yeah, and it's happening. That's going to accelerate right there. So let me explain what I mean by this.
You're saying this stuff, we're just in the first inning. It's coming.
Nothing's happened yet.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
Nothing's happened. I'm serious about that. Nothing's happened, but it's fixing to happen.
Yeah.
Okay? It's fixing to happen. So let's ask what causes that, okay? So what causes that is we started out with, in the world, with hardware, right? Hardware was invented. And at some point, you had software to run the hardware, right? One of the most interesting decisions in the world is that IBM, who created the hardware, decided not to own the software. And they gave one of the greatest deals of all time to Bill Gates and Paul Allen to own the software, right? Yeah. So then all of a sudden, at some point, you're using your hardware, your phone, and you're using software, and you get this offer to buy a data plan because you were out of space.
Right.
So someone came up with the idea of, how about if, and they called it the cloud, how about if we just string computers together and we put all your data there so you can access it from any technology hardware that you want to use, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, here's the interesting thing about that. That's a commodity. For about $1,000 or less, I can buy a piece of hardware, I can buy a piece of software or multiple softwares, and I can buy a data service, and I'm in business, right? Yes. Okay. That's a commodity. What's changing the world today, and it's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And that is...
Anyone who put teacher or professor up in their one-word description?
Is data powered by artificial intelligence. That's it.
Yeah.
So everything that we have, anything that's been invented by any of us prior to what's coming, has all been, the industry's all been about this. The latest gadget, the latest idea, the latest thing. Cool, that's great. That's what that is, by the way. But this right here, big data that is being powered by artificial intelligence, that, and by the way, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in real estate. This applies to all industries. By the way, the medical profession, the legal profession, the architecture profession, any profession you want to name is at this moment. And the reason is because, you have two worlds that we live in. The first one is the physical world, and the second one is the digital world. And what happens is everybody who's physically based, all their businesses, they wake up, and the fatal question they say is, what's the least I have to do in the digital world to protect what I currently have physically? The challenge is that the people who are in the digital space wake up every morning and they say, what's the least I have to do physically to kick your physical butt?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So this is the battle. The battle is over big data, okay, powered by artificial intelligence. So let's look at the real estate industry.
Now you should sign that, Gary, because some people will pay me to.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I'm a capitalist.
Okay. So let's look at the real estate industry real quick and why we feel this change going on, Brad. Industry starts out as real estate agent. At some point, we have the tech enabled real estate agent, okay? MLS being a good example of that. Technology enabling the real estate agent. Does that make sense?
Where does the MLS come in? I'm confused.
It's the technology that enables agents to do their jobs
The
better.
MLS.
MLS is an example of where technology showed up to enable the agent, okay? And then the next thing is all of a sudden we have this thing, and it's called the agent enabled tech. Got it?
And what's that?
Well, okay. And then, by the way, the fourth would be the prediction that someday you just have tech. Well, the interesting thing is that will never happen, and that ship has sailed.
Right.
So you can literally take our industry and put it in a box like this and say, you're going to be one of two people. You're either going to be an agent who is enabled by tech, or you're going to be the agent that is enabling the tech.
Right.
Now, here's this interesting. So now let's talk about...
Let me just bring it down a little bit. Tell me exactly what that means. What's the difference?
Well, the agent is the fiduciary here,
right,
and the tech is the fiduciary there. So this is a battle over who's going to be the fiduciary.
So that might be
who's the rock star in the experience.
So it might be smart contracts. All the tech taking care of that stuff that used to be the fiduciary.
We'll get there in just a second. That's right. So let's now list these. So
running out of time. That's what I'm worried about.
No, you're not.
Yeah, you're.
No. No, we're not.
I love this guy. If you saw our email banners, you would just think.
No, we're not, because when you invited me, you said I could do what I wanted.
No, you're doing a good job.
Okay, good.
Touche. I love that.
You did. I have the email.
Okay, you're losing.
We'll post it. Yeah, I love you. You're awesome. All right. So, by the way, Realtor.com started that whole mess, okay? And then we have Zillow. You have Trulia. We can throw Redfin into that. We can throw Purple Bricks into that. We can throw Open Door into that. We can throw OfferPad into that. Pretty much all the people that Inman News worships. No, I love Brad. And I mean, he knows I love him. But
because they're really smart people, Gary.
Well, okay. And they're not? Okay. Whatever.
But you're losing.
So here,
you're losing me on this.
Okay, hang on a second.
Agent-enabled tech. You're saying all of these players on the right have agents.
Well, they're agent-enabling tech.
But they're all tech-driven companies, correct?
I will tell you that every one of these companies have agents because they have to, not because they want to.
Gotcha.
These are not agent-centric businesses. If they could do it without, if Glenn Kelman could run Redfin without agents, he'd do it in a heartbeat. And if he tells you otherwise, he's lying. Okay?
Well, he'll be here in an hour to defend.
Well, I'll be happy to stay. But I'm just telling you that he's in that category. Okay? Absolutely. Yeah, love it. And he loves that category. But that's who he is. Okay? You with me? So the reason why you and I get off to rocky starts at times,
yeah, that's all right,
is because I'm over here.
You're over there.
I'm over here.
Right.
Yeah, I work for the real estate agent. I have my whole life. I'll go to my grave on my gravestone saying that. Yep. So, well, I'm not going to get there too soon. So right. So if you look over here, when Inman, and I love what you do, by the way. I wouldn't have come here if I didn't appreciate you. I really wouldn't have. I just said, kiss my ass, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And I didn't say that.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't. But
it took a while to persuade you.
Well, it did, because people that work with me are more important than people that don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I get paid to help certain people. And
we're grateful you're here, and I want you to sit down with me so I can chat you up.
Okay, hang on. So here's where the challenge comes in, and that is when and I'm not picking on you, by the way, but because I read pretty much everything that's written through your news service, so I want to respect that. The reason why you and I get crosswise at times is because you represent these guys as the disruptors. Over here, the articles are already 3 ways to have a better open house. 4 ways, these are going to kick your ass and change the world. 5 ways to list FSBOs. Right? This go back and check and you'll see it. But this absolutely treats these individuals as if they're not disruptors, as if they work for this group. Now here's another interesting fact about this group. Let's put every one of these groups. I can put the aggregators over here, and they want to reduce the agent's income by at least 30% or more, right? So
they want to do what?
Reduce their income. So the real estate agent, if they do business with these guys, they're going to operate at about a 2% approximate commission.
But if they were charging 3, if they deliver volume of transactions,
well,
they
be
make
careful
up for the difference.
You need to be careful with that, because you're talking to the guy who wrote the book on it.
Yeah, but you got 100,000 agents.
No. I'm going to give you a number here, 10%. If you're spending more than 10 of your gross income for leads.
Yeah.
Now, I wrote a book, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There isn't anyone that understands
this. How many in the audience think Gary's book applies as much today as it did when he wrote it? Say yes. And how many think it doesn't apply quite as much as he did when he wrote it? Let's just see what people.
Here's the interesting thing about that. So we sit down.
That's for Dr. Slido. Did you get that, Dr. Slido?
Okay, so we sat down a year ago to write the MREA updated version, right?
Right.
Here's what we found out. Everything that's in that book is 100% accurate today, except for the actual numbers.
Well, we want to ask the audience if they agree with you.
Well,
Dr. Slido, are you on this? How many think Gary's book is as relevant today as it was when he wrote it, and how many think it is not?
One caveat: you have to put your income down by your answer.
Okay, well,
because I will tell you that anybody who would say that it's not relevant today are your least earning people.
My audience has a higher income than your community, Gary, because they paid a lot to come here. But anyway.
Okay. So here's my point to you. My point is that I am absolutely the leading expert.
We're going to be friends when this is all over.
Oh, of course. I like your shoes.
Hey, Dr. Slido, how we doing?
Okay.
Dr. Slido.
Okay, time out. Now, you're taking my time by asking some guys, so stop that.
Well, it's a conversation, Gary.
Okay. So here's the thing. That's the cost. for a lead. If you're spending more than that, you better have good justification. You with me?
Yep.
Now, that's just what the research says. And I spend all my time, this is what I do, by the way. Now, you get into this group, these guys want that commission to be 1% to 2% as well, correct? Redfin?
Redfin, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Purple Bricks wants it to be maybe 1% to 1.5% max. Open Door will pay you 1%. OfferPad will pay you 1%. This is why you feel the way you feel about change, is because all of that group wants tech to be the rock star and wants the agent to be the functionary.
Let me just ask you one question, Gary. And
and it doesn't have to be like that.
You spread this thing, which I think the industry's been good at, which is fear, which is they wake up every morning maliciously trying to go after the real estate industry.
Well,
and I don't. You meet with.
You've
cut deals with Zillow. You've cut deals with Realtor.com. I know for a fact you met with the disruptors. You'll cut a deal with anyone on their behalf. So if they were that malicious, why would you let them into your office, right? I mean, you have a deal with Zillow, correct?
Do I?
I presume you do. I hear you do.
I don't think I do.
You have no deal with Zillow.
What's my deal?
To protect the listings from having...
Oh, no, they bought that agreement with Dotloop. I didn't sign a deal with Zillow.
So you have no deal with Zillow?
No. Why would
you don't do business with any of these people?
Why would I do business? What do I do with Zillow?
Okay.
I don't have listings.
I've heard through the grapevine. Obviously, we don't publish it because...
No, I have an agreement with Dotloop that they can't use our data.
Right.
Now, Zillow's come back to us, and they're now asking that we give them their data. They just recently asked for that. And what was my answer?
Your agents are sitting across the table from Redfin. They're spending money on Zillow. These are smart people that are investing in things. They're not that stupid, are they? Gary, you got to sit down. Come on, just sit down.
Yeah, I'm going to do one more thing.
Okay, really quick. This is Barry Diller did this to me, Barbara Corcoran.
No.
They are people that can take the stage away from Brad Inman. But
No,
it's fine.
I'm not trying to do that.
I'm very relaxed and comfortable.
So the last thing I'll say then is this, and that is, so that's the challenge.
Yeah.
So the real estate agent gets to vote with their feet. So by the way, this group, if this group doesn't own its tech, it's going to succumb to that group.
Gotcha.
That's my point.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, if you put someone between you and the customer, and you let technology get between you and the customer, here's an interesting number for you, $1 billion. That's the amount of money that we surveyed and we estimate that our own real estate agents spend on technology outside of Keller Williams. $1 billion, Brad.
But
I don't get paid a fraction of that.
But historically, the industry's paid $12 to $15 billion for advertising, whether they gave it to the Chicago Tribune, or they gave it to billboards, or they gave it to bus signs, or whether they gave it to Zillow. That money, so $1 billion, I mean, they're spending, they've always spent billions marketing, haven't they? Didn't you always spend money in marketing?
This is not marketing dollars.
Yeah.
These are operational dollars. I didn't say...
So I'm sorry, do it again. So I missed.
On software.
Oh, and software. They're spending $1 billion.
And the reason why the software vendors don't like me today is I'm literally taking that spend to zero.
Yeah.
My goal is to reclaim $1 billion.
But aren't you going to sell technology to your agent? Isn't that part of your business model?
That's $300 a year.
What? But that's $300 a year. Times 150.
Well, compared to Sync, that would charge the same amount to an agent, anywhere from 18 to 100. I've got agents in the audience that spend $300,000 a year on technology alone.
Yeah.
By the way, in about 3 months, they'll be spending that much. $300.
Come sit down with me.
So last thing. So here's the issue. So when we talk about, that's the last thing. You're getting an education. That's good for you. Well, here's the thing is when I stood up and said that we were becoming a technology company, man, I took a beating from everybody. I thought I was a dumbass.
Yeah. Well, you said it, and no one knew exactly what you were building.
Well, I didn't want them to know.
Yeah. But it was quite a declaration. I'm spending $1 billion in technology. You would automatically...
Okay, so if I let someone build my technology for me, what do I own?
Say it again.
If I let someone... let me ask you a question. Does Amazon own their software, or do they buy it from Fidelity?
They own it.
Does Amazon own their software, or do they buy it from pick a company?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't know.
You know the answer.
Well, I assume they...
Amazon owns their software. Facebook owns their software. Yes?
Yeah.
Netflix owns their software, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why would we tell the real estate agent, don't own your software? Or don't let your company you're in partnership with, why would we tell them not to own it? That's a dumbass statement, man. That you're literally heading them to the slaughterhouse. Not you, because you don't say that. But I'm saying anyone who says that is literally leading the real estate agent by the nose.
Now would you sit down with me? I asked you as a gentleman.
I know you did, but I haven't finished.
Come on, Gary, sit down with me.
No. We got one more thing. So here's what changes the world. So there's a difference between software and platforms. Our industry doesn't really understand this, okay? And that is, if you want to build an innovation engine, Brad, in order to build a platform that you can innovate on top of technology, the first thing is you have to build a cloud service. Now, this isn't a cloud service like I was talking about. This is an industry-specific cloud service. How long does it take to build an industry-specific cloud service? About 2 to 3 years. That's what Google tells me. That's about how long it took us to do it. About 2 to 3 years. Okay? Second thing, and by the way, you have to have, in order to make it significant, you have to have the data. So tomorrow morning, if EXP announced that they were going to build a cloud service, you'd say, well, that's good, but where's the data? You don't have any data. Okay, but if they had the data and they were going to build a cloud service, it would take them 3 years. If Compass today said, we don't have a cloud service, but we're going to do it, and they don't have one, by the way, but if they said they were going to do it, it's going to take them 2 to 3 years. You with me? Okay, here's the problem with that. The problem with that 2 to 3 year time frame is it's happening right now. If you don't already have it, you're in second place. Okay? Now, here's the other thing, and that is you have to have artificial intelligence. Why? So here's a good example. So let's just think about this for a second. Let's say that you have an agent software and you have a real estate company software. So in the real estate company software, we have all the data on production of everybody in the business, right? So then we have the agent. So tomorrow morning, the agent goes out and they take a listing. But because all the data on days on market, price to sell ratios, all that's down here, the second the agent takes the listing, artificial intelligence sends a ping to them and says, for a home in that price range in this neighborhood, you should use smart plan number 12 with these attributes. Would you like us to execute it? If the agent clicks yes, the whole plan is initiated in an instant over a 12-week period. Okay?
Great, let's throw out some questions to the audience. Can we use Dr. Slido?
That was his way of getting control.
No,
yeah, it was.
Great. No, I learned a lot, Gary. Dr. Slido, whatever we need to do for you all to submit questions, and then we'll get some of those questions up. I think they'll pop up right here, and we can answer whatever.
So here's the challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to educate you.
Yeah,
so
no, I need to be educated.
Well, the point is that everything that we're dealing with today around software is bolt-on technology. Yeah. I read the latest article you just wrote, you published yesterday, and it said, here's the 3 rules for technology.
Yeah. What did we say?
Well, number 1, you said it needs to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that a good thing?
Well, how are you going to, if you don't have that, it's not going to talk to each other. So when I read that article, I went, jeepers, you should have taken a poll by Dr. Slidell or whatever and asked them how much, how much of their technology is going to actually talk to each other. Brad, it doesn't talk. We have agents out there.
I talked to a consultant yesterday, and his whole business is to work with broker owners on integration.
Just call me. Integration, if you do that,
exactly.
It's integrated.
I'm agreeing with you, Gary. Slow down. And the fact that we'd even need an industry to help integration shows that we have a problem. So what are we asking? Any questions from the audience? Oh, here we go. Will you own, here's a KW agent, will you own my data as a KW agent? In other words, will you own his data? Or
Yeah, we'll own them with them.
With them?
Sure.
So this whole confusion about data ownership, you'll own it with them?
Well, someone's got to own it.
Yeah.
In other words, whoever owns that cloud service and that artificial intelligence is going to own that data. Now, here's the question I'd have you for that person.
Yeah.
Someone's going to own it. Would you rather a real estate company that has a history of being the most agent-centric on the planet, right? Here's another number for you, $1 billion in profit sharing paid out. Now, I'll invite anyone in this room who's paid out $1 billion to their people in a profit share program.
Are you still doing that, by the way?
Why wouldn't I?
I mean, that's core to your program, right?
Yeah.
Profit sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is that still driving your growth the same as it has?
I wouldn't think so.
Now, what is driving it now? Community?
Technology.
Technology? They're coming to you for technology.
Yeah, so here's another number for you, $6 billion. And that's the amount of productive volume that joined Keller Williams in the first 90 days of 2018.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like this has been going for 22 years? We've been talking about robots for 5 years here, 10 years. We've been talking about all the things you have up on that board. Why is it? Were you a little late to the game too?
No, there's a difference between late and too late.
Timely. You were timely.
Well, actually, I think I actually think we're the only one on time.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see that in the next couple of months.
Now, you told me backstage you're launching something later this year. Tell the crowd what that is.
Well, we don't launch things.
Okay.
So, again, I'm going to get back to this point right here. The challenge that you have is if you haven't already built an innovation platform,
yeah,
you're 2 to 3 years late. And the battle is going to be over the consumer.
Yeah.
So one last thing. Just think about this. So if we think about the consumer, and we think about, by the way, if you want to be Netflix, number one, you have to own your software. Number two, you have to build an end-to-end consumer experience, right? That's personalized as you use it, right? If you go to your Netflix account, mine does not look like yours. If I go to my Amazon page, mine doesn't look like yours, right? Okay, so that's interesting to point that out because if you think about the consumer experience as voyeurism to search to consideration to close to ownership, and we put those in buckets, you realize that voyeurism in search is the only thing that actually is out there today for the consumer.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, we don't have online transaction yet,
right,
though we will by the end of the year. And oh, by the way, we don't have ownership, which we'll have that. So imagine an app. Just as an example, just imagine an app for the consumer that in real time, the second they use it, it begins using artificial intelligence to just like Netflix or anything else, to personalize the experience in real time.
Yeah.
Imagine that it says, after you, at a closing table, you say, Brad, now that you've bought a home, would you like to refinance if you could save money? Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to click yes, and you don't have to do anything. By the way, if rates change and you can save money, you're going to get an alert and it's going to say, would you like to refinance? Now, because we own a mortgage company and we don't charge origination fees or closing costs, the mortgage industry hates me. Too bad. Okay? We don't charge any of that. We don't charge you any of that. It's free. Just click it and we'll refinance your home. That's what's coming.
At what point?
And by the way, that's the battle.
Before you go.
The battle is not over search.
Yeah.
That's going to be a commodity.
Here we got a question. At what point do you care about the consumer experience versus the agent experience? Or do you leave that to the agent?
Well, no, I care about the agent. I care about the agent's consumer experience.
And do you feel like your technology is enabling the agent to create a better consumer experience, or do you actually?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Are you ever going to go direct to the consumer?
Well, here's the thing about it. No, why would I do that?
Okay.
No, I don't have buyers or sellers. No. If you think about it this way, just think about it this way. The consumer is the agents. But if the whole world is moving towards the phone being the remote control of their life, right? Then the agent's going to have that tool. If the agent doesn't have that tool to offer an end-to-end consumer experience, how are they going to service?
So you're obsessed by the agent getting the tools to serve the consumer. That's really your vision.
Well, let me ask you a question. How long after you wake up in the morning do you go to your phone?
Really quick, unfortunately. I wish I didn't.
No, we all do.
Yeah.
No, we all do. So it's the remote control.
Kind of sick, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, but it's where we are.
Does EXP scare you? Does anyone scare you, Gary?
No.
Yeah?
No, because, no, they don't.
That was the wrong way to phrase the question.
No, think about this. When I started Keller Williams, I built an innovation engine. So here's a good example. You bring up EXP, great example.
By the way, Glenn speaks so highly of you. He thinks you're a genius.
Love it. Great. Good for him. I appreciate it. And I don't care, right? Yeah. So think about it this way. When we created the profit share program, this is what everyone missed. We created a leadership council. We assigned the decision making of the firm to that council. So we profit share today. If our agents want to change that to something else, they can.
Right.
They can vote and change it. Here's an interesting tidbit of information.
So they come together on a regular basis?
When we first started sharing money, we didn't profit share. We actually shared the money. Off the top, you sell a house, we wrote a check. That has problems.
That formula.
3 years into doing that, it started showing real problems. And so we ultimately voted and changed it to profit sharing.
So you're saying that's what EXP does now, and they're gonna run into problems.
What I'm saying is same with Exit, same with all the other copycats. That at the end of the day, they think they've reinvented something that's broken. But here's the interesting thing.
Remember, that's flattery when people copy you.
Listen, I have no problem with that. And when people disagree with me, it just means that I'm ahead.
Yeah.
I don't worry about that. I honestly don't worry about that.
What about that agent count, EXP? You guys have been sitting there wringing your hands a little bit.
Why are we talking about them?
Well, they're just part of the scene, and we got a question from the audience.
Not really. Well, not really. I mean, at the end of the no. We're captains of our own.
I don't want to obsess on it. Let's move on. Okay. Let me ask you this: leadership. You are known as a leader in the industry. Okay. Think about in your 30 years, has the role of the leader changed? How's leadership changed from, say, 30 years exactly?
Well, I think the industry's changed, and that is that today you can say the before technology and the after technology era. Prior to technology becoming an absolute imperative for our industry, training, coaching, consulting, right? That was the value proposition that we provided real estate agents.
And that's how you make your money, right?
Well, we became the number one training company in the world. Right. We built the number one coaching company inside the real estate industry. Dude, we did that. Here's the problem is that used to be 100% of the conversation. And we woke up about 3 years ago and went, we're not going to stop doing that. That's no longer what will protect our people. Technology and owning that technology and putting technology that works in their hands is the only thing that we're focused on.
But that doesn't mean the agents still need it, but you'll be giving it to them in a different way. Like, I presume your training is going more AI and using technology and not one-on-one, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Let me go back to Clea's theory. She said, she compared it to Wall Street, and she said the digital transaction for part of the deals.
By the way, one comment, and we won't talk about this again about EXP.
No, that's all right.
What I found fascinating.
Remember, I didn't bring it back there.
No, they did. But that's okay. No, I just want to point out one thing, and that is, I went back and looked, and there's a group of leaders there that used to be with Keller Williams. I went back and looked, and we paid those leaders over $1 million last year. So I was wondering publicly, since they think we're broken, if they would just renounce that money.
There you go. By the way, in fairness, Glenn will be on the stage to explain his business model.
Cool.
Let's go back to Clea, because I'm curious and I got this, a different vision, a different way of looking at it. But she says a digital transaction for part of the deals, meaning much like E-Trade. The middle will be Charles Schwab, people and agents, but an agent with a different role. And the third will be more relationship driven. She's kind of saying 5 years out, you can put Redfin, you can put Purplebricks in the middle, you can put, at the low end, we don't have it, maybe instant offer. Does that sound bullshit? Is that going to happen?
Sure it is. I want you to understand something.
I kind of like when you're up there now. It took me a while to get comfortable with it. As you could all tell.
Here's the point I'm trying to make. That right there, the ability to innovate in real time, that changes everything.
Yeah.
The ability to build a platform that talks to each other, where everything is integrated is everything. The problem in our industry today is none of the companies that you would put on that side over there, and we can go from Realogy. I mean, when Berkshire Hathaway calls us up and wants to rent our cloud service, that's a problem.
Realogy, how do you go ahead.
Yeah, Realogy. Yeah, whatever. I called you cheap shot. I called you Bob once.
Yeah, I know. You called me a lot of things in March. I was in Australia, so I didn't hear it, but
that was good.
People were texting me like crazy. I said, "Oh, don't worry."
You know why I do that is because it's because a lot of the articles you produce are one-sided. They don't tell the other story, right? Yeah, I got pissed because you put my name in an article in the header and no one asked me for my opinion.
Well, that's because we get a lot of readers when we put your name there.
Okay. There's always two sides to the story.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to give me equal time in the article, then I have no choice but to stand up and attack that.
Right.
You leave me no choice. If you'll call me every time you mention me and let me talk, then I'll be nicer.
Well, people love to read about you, and we try to cover you as fairly as we can. Our journalists wake every morning trying to do that. But
they do a great job.
We make mistakes, yeah. Let me go back to leadership. How is running a real estate company today different than it was, or is it exactly the same?
It's all about technology.
Yeah, because you've always been kind of facilitator, educator, which is the new management style, more collaborator. Is that true with your?
Well, I've always been a collaborator.
Yeah. And with your best agents, I always love the fact Ben Kenny's and Sue Adler's, these people I admire, are part of your brain trust, and they seem to me to be real good people.
They're great people, by the way. And I spend probably 20 to 30 hours a week working with our top people. Yeah, that's what I do for a living. That's why I know.
So I'll make a confession. I was out of the industry for many years in other industries doing things. I came back, and the first thing I had heard was Keller Williams is on fire. And I had the impressions that a lot of people had: cult, Texas, Christian, all these tag words for Gary Keller and Keller Williams. And I was inherently suspicious as a journalist. And I went down and I wanted to understand the phenomenon. And the one thing that really struck me when you invited me to, I think, Family Reunion or one of those, was the community you created. And it's something we're very proud of. And we have a lot of overlap. There are people here that love you, and hopefully some folks from your community that respect us. And I think we've all learned that building community in real estate is very powerful. So
it is.
We don't agree on everything, but I congratulate you on that.
Well,
and I also truly believe that you see the future better than a lot of us, and I really appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks.
And really do.
Thanks. What do you want to know? What are you dying to know?
Well,
what do you want to know?
Tell these people one thing that's going to help them. We're saying you just said it. Change is upon us. What do they need to do?
When I wrote the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, I said it very crystal clear, and that is your database is your business. Your personal relationship with your database is your frontline defense, offense and defense against anything else that can happen. That's it. Lead generate, touch your people, right? Build relationship with your database. And business hasn't changed.
So the principles are the same, but the difference now is the database. But that was always the case, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Keep in touch with your customers. I mean, you said that over and over.
Well, the truth of the matter is that the entire real estate experience is going to come online. That's all there is to it. Why did Zillow want our data that they can't use and they have to be audited twice a year to not use it? Is because they want to make their AVM better.
Yeah.
Now, is that good for us? Yes or no? Okay then. Okay then. The answer is no. It's not. It actually isn't good for us as an industry. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for coming all the way up.
You're welcome.
You're the best.
You're the best. Thank you.
Finding the perfect home starts with RE/MAX.com, which features charming cottages, bungalows, homesteads, hideaways, and abodes. Conveniently located right in the heart of everywhere. Also includes 5 million bedrooms, 4 million bathrooms, plus every type of floor, staircase, fireplace, period detail, and some of the best schools anywhere. Find the listings you love and the agents who can get them at RE/MAX.com. That's the sign of a RE/MAX agent.
Knock was really appealing because we could move into the new house while we fix up the old one.
It's different and it almost seemed too good to be true. But once I talked to an agent, I just knew that this was possible.
When you're buying or selling a home, there's like a million moving parts. And with Knock, we had one place to go.
All I'm having to do is pack up my boxes and move.
You don't get that in traditional real estate.
The ease in which everything happened was really unbelievable.
Find out how much your home is worth for free at knock.com.
Here to discuss new business models and new ways of thinking about the world of real estate, please welcome Eric Eckhart with Purple Bricks, Glenn Sanford with eXp Realty, and Joshua Hunt with Trilora.
So in prepping for this discussion, I wrote these guys an email saying that we should think of this as like a dinner party right around the time the dessert course is served. But I kind of feel like it's more like the dinner party after the uncle with really different political views like comes in. Just backstage, Glenn, you just said to me that you will actually renounce your earnings from Keller based on what Glenn just said about leadership at EXP.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting challenge. I mean, I'm still vested with Keller, and I get profit share from that system, having actually built a fairly large agent base back in 2004 through 2007. And in fact, that was the thing that attracted me there. And had me building a business there. So I mean, it's a great model. It's I still think it's one of the best models out there. So I love it, and but I would actually take up that challenge. So if Gary wants to quit sending me the profit share checks, I won't give him a hard time about it.
Tell us what you're doing differently at EXP. I mean, we just saw a model of the world where basically Gary is saying that like everything that exists right now is before, and this new vision for Keller is after. And I want to hear how you guys think. You clearly are going to think differently. So tell me how what you're doing is actually innovative and why it's happening now.
I'll continue on just a little bit. I came from a technology background prior to real estate. I was built an online service in Western Canada called Interactive Cafe. I worked for America Online at one point in my career, and so technology is sort of just part of my DNA. I even write occasional, software just because I can. But I think one of the things that I think about is that we're almost the cloud has almost already been here. I mean, it's been here for a while, and the thing that we think about quite a bit this might be a phrase or a word that you haven't really heard much of, but it's microservices, and microservices is really kind of where things are going, which is really small pieces of code that can do some really powerful stuff that can all be plugged together. So if you look at companies like Netflix, I mean, they build in this very honeycomb style way of building applications and software that allows you to do things. In the real estate space, we've got the transaction management piece, we've got the commission piece, we've got the ways that all this stuff works, and we're already working in a microservices world. So I think to some extent the cloud's important, no doubt about it. It's what powers it. But it's how you use it and how you sort of think about sort of this idea of small. It's like SEAL team software. Like it's small, really good software, but it doesn't need to do everything. And I think that's the thing that really sort of, if you can think about it from that perspective, you can go from prototype. You can go to prototype in 30, 60 days, and to V1 in another 30, 60 days, and maybe you do a couple more revisions, but you've got working software that does really cool stuff in very short periods of time. So
you're really talking about the ability to grow a software platform very rapidly at this point in time, and actually test and iterate on things in real time in the market. I mean, obviously that's something that both of you guys also are thinking about, both with technology and with your models. And Joshua, I want to acknowledge, I mean, you also are someone who comes from a Keller background for a certain period, right?
Yeah, my profit share checks covered payroll for Trailora for the first year, so I'm very grateful for Gary. I mean, it was huge. And what's
Gary,
interesting,
we are your children, and we're coming to get you.
Well, what's interesting is he asked the question of everybody is how relevant is MREA? And Trailora, if you look at page 199 and 200 and page 273 of that red book, it's Trailora. Yeah. I just had the courage to build it. He pawned it off to other people to build it. And so if you listen to a David Brandon, a Michael Foss, or an Eddie Lampert, the CEOs of Sears, Toys R Us, and Sports Authority, he sounds just like him. He's missing that the chance that the future is coming, and if you don't understand that the margins in this industry are obscene, and if we don't get them down to where the consumer benefits, we're going to see bankruptcies in this space just like we did in retail. And so all I did was take his book, tie technology to it with extraordinary experience for the consumer and our agents, and we built a company that's the future.
Yeah. So Eric, I want to give you the opportunity to jump in, but first I want to quickly ask, with EXP and Trelora, which are models that sort of spun out of this Keller background, what's genuinely different about what you guys are doing versus Keller?
You know, I think the industry has a challenge is its barrier to entry is so low that it just flocks all kinds of people. So the level of service and commitment under an independent contractor model is virtually impossible. And a lot of people think in these high times that it's possible, but listen, we used to call iBuyer REITs back in the day. We'd collect money, we'd buy properties, and then every time the market goes down, they disappear, just like that. And so what we've done is built this employment model for agents where they can have extraordinary careers, make really good livings, have a work-life balance with vacation and company cars and anything you would imagine, while together as a collective team working to serve the consumer through our technology. And as we advance week by week and month by month, the consumers are showing us where they'll take control and where they don't want it. We truly believe that agents are not going away in the unforeseeable future. I mean, they're needed. We need agents because when a divorced couple is falling apart and fighting, there's no left swipe and right swipe that gets them to pay attention and get the deal closed. When the back door's left open by some agent and the cat's let out, she doesn't go to the app to be upset that her cat's gone. She wants human interaction. And so really it's about the software is just enabling our agents and the consumer to know what's going on, but we have to control that process. And when you're trying to control price, process, and schedules, that's not an independent contractor.
Yeah. Eric, I mean, you also have a model where you're working, it's an employment model, but it's very tech forward, right?
Yeah, correct. Well, first and foremost, KW had no influence whatsoever on our model. So just to put that out there, I don't come from that system, but really our core principles is great value and great service. And it sounds cliche, but it really is. It's really one of the founding principles to offer a full service offering at a flat fee. So that's critical for us to really focus on the consumer and everything that we do with our model. With regard to technology, it's really just a facilitator for what we do. We are a true hybrid offering. And just to go back to the initial question, just for clarification, our agents are independent contractors. So we don't have that fixed operating expense. We can pass those cost savings on to the consumer. And what that allows our agents to do is continue to work and service customers. We have over 50,000 favorable reviews through the UK, Australia, and now here in the US. And just a quick overview, we're about 8 months in operations here in the US, so we're scaling quickly. We're ahead of plan, and we're about 6 states right now. But again, the takeaway from the message to your initial question is our core focus is really around the consumer.
Right. So I'm curious, I mean, we're going to have Glenn from Redfin come on after this, and there's this increasing divide, right, between employment of agents with certain models and saying that gives you a much higher level of control of your agents versus, both EXP, Purplebricks, maintaining an independent contractor model, but also using technology a lot more in the way that you deliver. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think you're genuinely going to be able to control the quality and consistency of the consumer experience with independent contractor agents?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And just to validate that with data and actual market performance, today in the US, we have near a 5-star Trustpilot review. Our net promoter score is comparable to eBay, Disney, and Amazon. So we are already demonstrating that. I wouldn't use the word control, but again, they're aligned with what our core principles are, our culture to provide great service, focusing on the consumer, but saving them thousands in the process through the real estate transaction.
Yeah. Glenn, I guess a deeper question is, how are you going to do that?
Yeah, well, for us, and we've got some really great reviews as well. I mean, we were ranked a top employer with Glassdoor, got top 50 CEO, small, mid-sized business award this last year. So we really focus on really the agent experience as much as anything. So so it's that's where we focus our primary attention. However, we're working on providing tools and technologies and marketing platforms and those things for agents to build their businesses. We're very agent-centric. Agents are the brand, and we're really the company that powers that. And so we use the term for a lot of years called powered by EXP Realty. Because we're really kind of thinking about ourselves more as a platform. Actually, some states have some issues with that, so we're having to say brokered by or change it a little bit. But that whole idea that the agent is the brand and help them with their brand marketing, help them with sort of understanding how to get to their consumers, how to continue to stay relevant with their consumers and their constituencies and help them think about how do they continue to build on that. So we're not as much the forward-facing side of it, even though obviously from regulatory purposes we have to be, but we're really thinking about how do we help the agent stay relevant, and then ultimately how do we enhance their long-term value proposition.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, because I think one of the core questions right now is, does the brokerage, we're seeing different brokerage models where the brokerage itself is trying to serve or build a relationship with the consumer, versus brokerage models where the brokerage sees its core role as being creating a platform for its agents, right? Where would you guys put yourselves in terms of that distinction?
I think when you have an independent contractor model, you have the wrong customer for where the future's headed. I mean, I think we've got to get middle people out of the way that are trying to make margins after margins after margins. You got a franchise, and you got a region, and you have a big group, and so everybody's trying to get their hands in this pot. And if we did a survey, if we had this little computer nonsense they have up here asking questions with consumers, 90% of them would say, agents cost too much, but I'm stuck and there's no better option. When a better option is born, this model is chop suey.
But I would take a little bit of an exception with that. In fact, I think Glenn Kelman's going to come up here in a little bit. And he's been in Seattle for 15 years and still has less than 6% of the market. And he's been pushing that with salaried employees.
Yeah, but only 10% of his agents are truly employees. 90% of them are run around independent contractors.
Not in Seattle.
Yeah, in Seattle.
Okay, well, that'd be interesting follow-on. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's the employment model. And it's not the only thing that makes Traylora right. It's just an aspect that the expenses that all of these agents have to pay with all of their own stuff, the burdens they carry, it makes sense in a hot market. Yeah, I mean, anybody can be a good agent in a hot market. When this market flattens and declines, you're just going to see that the companies that are building, foundations which they can actually serve the consumer, not the agent, those are the ones that are going to last.
Yeah, and if I could just add, so at Purplebricks, it's really a hybrid approach. It's both. I don't think we can pick one or the other. So yes, we do a lot of we drive brand awareness and consideration in each market we're in to drive that across consumers, but we also provide a platform for agents to be successful. So they spend 100% of their time servicing customers. They're not soliciting for new business. They have exclusivity, then they have all the other attributes you'd get from any other model: training, support, leadership, infrastructure. But I think the biggest differentiator is the fact that we put them in a position to succeed, to do what they love to do, and that's provide great service. And again, I'll go back on the same statement, and save them thousands in commission expense.
And I think when you add to that, the very thing that is holding this industry together is the very thing that's going to tear it apart super fast. And my prediction is this will be the fastest tipping industry in our nation's history.
What is that thing, Jeff?
It's the fragmentation. We have independent contractors disputing with MLSs, disputing with franchises competing each other for an agent. They collaborate together, events like this, but behind each other's backs, they're gouging at each other. And so as this takes flight, and a couple of companies like Purplebricks or Traylora or a few others of us that lift and get the consumer experience up, one by one, agents will find it hard to pay broker split fees, MLS fees, Zillow marketing fees, because the commissions are coming down. $75 billion will go somewhere to $30 to $35 billion in the next 5 to 7 years. You just have to get your head around that. And so you got to build a business model that can function under that.
So clearly your model is the one that would be most impacted by that theoretically, Glenn. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I would put that out maybe 15 years. I mean, so this whole 5 to 7 years, I don't feel any sort of tipping point relative to that. I mean, there's a little bit of feedback in the marketplace, and I think that the space that, the low-cost space is getting more and more crowded. I mean, obviously, you guys jumping in with $168 million to sort of launch into the market. Yeah. Obviously, I think Redfin just raised another 250-something million just this last week. So you've got a number of people sort of in this space, sort of doing, trying to get into this lower cost space. Whereas we still have 2 million licensees, over 1 million members of the National Association of Realtors, and these are the folks that ultimately, at the end of the day, really have to go and, I think the term was, we're the people with the keys. I mean, the reality is that, even companies like Opendoor, who's sort of playing with how do you sort of get into houses a little bit differently, plays a role as well. But I see us, if we're 75 billion, if we get down in the 5 to 7 years down to 60 billion, I would be surprised. So I don't see that much compression taking place. But it's not to say that it won't take place. I think it's just going to take a lot longer. And then where does that all fit? I sort of look at commissions as almost being, we're almost agnostic to that, because we're still talking about independent contractors who will be making good livings, building a book of business, continue to service that business, because consumers are looking to work with people they know, like, and trust. And I think, generally speaking, these other providers tend to be the providers that are more marketing driven rather than relationship driven. So they're really focused on how to market that, and then you get whatever agent shows up versus the agent that they already know and already have a relationship. And since this is a significant transaction, it's hard to sort of think about going discount.
Yeah. So I just want to direct us towards, we only have a couple minutes left, and for this audience, what do we think, what of substance can we tell them about what they should be doing, about the way that you guys, who are really, leading visionary companies in this space, what are you seeing? What have you learned?
Well, I've said this before, but when I started this 6 years ago, I figured I'd be in 499 cities in 5 years, and I was 497 off, so I was close. But, it's one of these things that there is a longing and a clear path for where this needs to be, and everyone can see it. Whether you're Gary Keller or anybody sitting in this room, it's obvious. It's happened in almost every single industry. We're just fighting it better than anybody else. And so
that clear path is towards a more consumer-oriented, service-focused model.
Yeah, the Gabby Lipstick and Harry Hanke agent relationship stuff is going to go away, right? It's about time that it's no longer about who's the kid's soccer coach, and really about an extraordinary experience. I mean, for God's sakes, we're dealing with the most prized possession in America's portfolio and one of the biggest emotional processes that a consumer will ever go through. Yeah. We've got to stop having it be because you're my best friend, I'm using you. People want extraordinary service, they want complete transparency, and they want it at a fair price, and that's what the future is. And anybody not working to that direction is heading the wrong way.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I share a similar view there. I echo the same sentiments, rather. I think really the North Star, at least from our perspective, is really the consumer. I think they're going to want more transparency, more convenience, and a more cost-effective solution. And you can't deny kind of consumer trends and the change in behavior and what we're seeing in the marketplace today. And I can speak to the markets that we're in. And to go back to your initial question, I believe, again, there will be more pressure on commission. Whether it's 5 years, 3 years, 7 years, it's inevitable. We're seeing it in the market.
15 years.
2 years. 15 years. I mean, it's inevitable. We're seeing it in the market today. So I think it's just really, as you look at your business model, regardless of what category or how you want to classify it, it's how you're positioned to leverage trends going forward. But again, using the consumer as kind of your North Star.
What do you think, Glenn? You're really agent focused.
Yeah, to some extent, this for us, and I think for a lot of broker owners, is more kind of noise. I'd almost say, in that we know it's happening. It's kind of like maybe we're the frogs in the pot, and that could be the case because you don't actually know that it's starting to get toward boiling until it's sort of too late. But I don't actually fundamentally believe that. I actually think that it is a transaction that you only do a few times in your life, and it really does come down to know, like, and trust. That doesn't mean that there's not a space. There's definitely a space for different models, but for that high touch, it's still relationship driven, and I would say that your part timer, I think the one that you sort of had a nickname for earlier,
Gabby Lipstick.
What's that?
Gabby Lipstick.
Yes, there you go. But I think a lot of those are going to get displaced with a more high-functioning agent that's empowered through technology, and they're going to be empowered by companies that provide technology platforms. So I'm actually in alignment on that. I just don't see it, the race to the bottom on pricing.
You don't see it, or you don't want to see it?
No, I don't see it. No, I see compression, but it's slow, and you're talking about trying to change.
But think about this. 10 years ago, Zillow did not exist to the capacity it does today for the consumer.
True.
DocuSign. Photography has made advancements in the last decade that are extraordinary, right? Mm-hmm. Consumers are so educated with walking scores and school scores. I mean, they have anything at their fingertip.
Right.
Back in the day, 23 years ago, I waited for a book to come into the office on a dolly that I could open up and show clients. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, property values on average in the last 10 years have gone up anywhere from 30 to 100% in certain markets. Mm-hmm. We are doing half, if not more, or half as less than we used to but yet we're receiving 30 to 100% pay raises because we're still charging a percentage based on the value of the customers.
Well, I understand the moral.
They're not in the line.
I understand the moral debate. I mean, so I don't fundamentally disagree with that. But we're also, with all that comes.
So then is EXP not moral?
No, it's not. We're not talking. I understand you're saying we're charging too much. So that's sort of a preference debate,
guys.
But I think where we're kind of going toward is this idea that you're still dealing with a paradox of choice, and with choice and with information comes more complexity, and they still need that trusted professional to help them filter through that. It's not just because they saw it on Zillow that they're going to be able to get that.
Yes, and we should sit on.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say one comment to that. So I think a big misconception or myth in the industry is that if you pay a discount fee, or we call greater value, you get a discounted service. And again, that's a myth. And at Purplebricks or other organizations like Treloar, you're getting a full service offering. You're just paying less. So,
in fact, arguably with Purplebricks and
Joshua,
Treloar, it's more. Well, we're actually on Glenn's time, not ours, because Gary went over. So we actually have 7 more minutes.
Let's wrap it up this way. I want to hear from each of you guys how many years from today you think it will be before we see a significant decrease in our existing commission model.
In the next 8 to 9 years, you will see one of the major guys today file bankruptcy.
I say I'm going to be a little more ambitious and go on a limb here. I'll say within 3 to 5 years, you'll see major pressure on commission fees. We're seeing it today.
Yeah, as an overall commission, I think we're going to still see it in that similar time frame, but I think that property prices will level it out, so incomes will, generally speaking, stay the same for top agents.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Killing it in your market already. Now it's time to take your business to the next level. Whether your goal is to make more money or have more me time, Sync empowers your team to do both. Through our nationwide network of more than 3,000 elite agent teams, Sync has the community and the technology to partner with your business so you can work smarter, not harder. Through better leads and higher conversion, Sync leads to faster growth and more free time to enjoy it all. Sync. Bigger business, better life.
Here to provide his vision of what's to come in real estate in the next 5 years, please welcome Redfin CEO Glenn Kelman.
Hi, everybody. I'm not actually here to provide my vision for what's going to happen to real estate over the next few years. Brad asked me to talk about something different, which is nerve-wracking for me because I don't have any goofy stories. I don't have any provocative statements. I wanted to talk to you about race and real estate, and it's a fraught topic for us to discuss. First, because I am a white person, but second, because I don't want to judge anyone. We're going to talk about what we can do as an industry to serve all of America, not just one part of America. And I want to be careful to take that issue seriously, but also not to accuse anyone of bias. And the reason we wanted to discuss it is because Redfin has been going through a process ourselves, where we have been asking ourselves if we are really serving all of our customers as well as we could. And we've been reading some academic research and making changes to policies and trying to recruit other kinds of folks so that we can live up to our full mission, which is to make real estate better for everybody, not just for white people, not just for men, but for everybody. And so what I'm going to do is just take you through a few slides. Hopefully they come up. Why don't we start here? This is a map of Chicago, and it's color-coded. All the red squares are where white people live. All the blue squares are where black people live. And all the yellow squares are where Latino and Latina people live. And what you can see is that even though we have this motto in America that we are all one, we are actually in some ways deeply divided. 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, a city like Chicago is still almost perfectly segregated by race. And it's not just that city, it's almost every city in America. This is one of the most diverse cities in the country, Houston. And again, you see the same pattern where a blue square is most likely to be next to another blue square, and a yellow square is most likely to be next to another yellow square. And each of those homes was sold by the real estate brokers in this room and by brokers around the country, people like you and me. I think most of us would have preferred to see integrated neighborhoods, but we were undoubtedly trying to perform our fiduciary duty. Whether the customer is white or black, we want to help those people get into the neighborhoods and the homes that they desire. And our job is to make them more competitive. So this often meant that we've helped white customers try to get into white neighborhoods. And that's our job, if that's what the customer wants. And people of color want those neighborhoods too. But what we found is that many of them really worry about whether or not their offers are treated fairly. They worry about whether agents are as eager to work with them as we are to work with wealthy people or white people or whatever group we think we belong to. So we surveyed about 2,000 home buyers in 2016, and we found that the people of color, about half of them were worried that their offers weren't treated fairly. And then we reran the survey a couple of weeks ago, and we found that that number was down to about 30%. So it's reassuring that people aren't as worried about it as they were a few years ago, but it's still a tragedy that 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 people of color who are shopping for a home aren't really sure they're getting a fair deal. And that isn't on you or me alone. It also has everything to do with the people selling the home, and it has to do with perceptions and reality too, but it's still a deep anxiety that we need to address. So there was this professor, Elizabeth Corver Glenn, who spent a year in Houston following 10 real estate agents. 2 were black, 3 were Latino and Latina, and 4 were white. And she talked to 125 different customers. She went to open houses. She got flyers. She did all sorts of work to see what a real estate agent really did, because she wanted to understand why there is so much research suggesting that real estate agents are sometimes part of the problem and not just part of the solution. And I emailed her because the research report was $600 and said, "Can you send it to me for free?" She said, "Sure." So this is what she found. Most of that research is incredibly affirming of what a real estate agent does. The findings will probably not surprise you that real estate agents confer a massive competitive advantage to their customers. A really good real estate agent doesn't work alone. She found that there are lenders that these agents work with who can perform miracles. People who can't qualify for a home, who can't get pre-approved for that amount, can with this lender. They have relationships with builders and architects to solve problems in ways that no one else could have imagined. And she just talked about how this network made the real estate agent much more powerful in the advantages that he or she conferred onto her customers. Whether it's staging or photography, lending, everything just made a huge difference. And the other thing that made a really big difference was that many of these agents had access to listings that the rest of the market couldn't see. So for their network of customers, they would be able to show listings that no one else could see, and they would make sure that their customers had an unfair advantage getting those listings. And I want to be absolutely candid with you that aside from pocketing listings, Redfin is trying to do exactly the same thing. I am the CEO of a company where we are trying to give our customers an unfair competitive advantage in buying and selling houses. That's why they would choose us instead of you, and we would expect everyone in this room to do exactly the same thing. And one of the examples that Professor Corver cited as a reason that there's bias in the industry was of a real estate agent performing what I thought of as stellar service. He knew a builder, he got his customer into a listing, the product actually had problems, the home was defective in many different ways. They only realized this after the closing, but based on his relationship with the builder, he insisted that they fix it free of charge. And he drove over every single morning for 4 straight weeks to see that the repairs were done. And this is because it was a $1.5 million listing. This was a referral client, and he wanted to make sure she was absolutely taken care of. But from Professor Korver's perspective, all of those advantages were selectively given to the customers that this person just naturally knew. And she noticed that there's a certain type of customer who gets better service. And this is just the reality, not just of real estate, but of capitalism, that most real estate agents want to work with wealthy customers because they're buying more expensive houses and it generates more fees. They're generally easier to work with because they have a higher credit score. And so part of the problem is that the people who need service the most, who understand the least about the home buying process, who are new to the American dream, are the ones who are the least sought after in the industry. But she also noticed something else, that most real estate agents are white, that some of the top producers are often white, and that almost all of their customers are white. And this happens because we draw on our networks to build our business. We think about where we went to college, we made friends there, we get customers from our own neighborhood, which, as we already said, can be segregated. We get customers from our kids' schools. We go to all the usual places. Just look at your Facebook feed. Most of your friends are the same color as you. And so your social network in real life and digitally is often where you get your customers. So white agents are able to confer these advantages to white customers. But then this was the quote that I read that changed my mind about what I was doing and whether Redfin had done enough. I was in this Alaskan yurt. I was worried that we were going to get eaten by bears because a bear had just eaten someone about a mile from that yurt. And I downloaded this research to my phone, and the sun never set. And I read this quote, and it just broke my heart. This is a real estate agent talking to an African-American woman who wants to buy a house. And the phrase that really made me cringe was the one that starts here, the people over there. What did he mean by the people over there? I don't want to think too much about that. But here was a lady who called, she wanted to buy a house, she had a good job, she had a steady income, and instead of immediately being eager to show her the property or to help her craft an offer or to help her figure out the whole process, he started giving her the third degree, and then she became upset because it just gets so old to feel like your money isn't as good as somebody else's just because you're buying a home in a predominantly black neighborhood or because you might be that race yourself. And he was careful to say that this isn't because of race, it's just because it's more work to educate this person about the process. But I'm not sure he knew how much she knew about the process. And part of what I asked myself in the yurt is I still don't know which brokerage that agent worked for. That agent could have worked for Redfin. That agent could have worked for some other brokerage too. None of us is free of sin. There's so much commercial pressure in real estate to get the good clients, the ones that have the most money. And we have a lot of biases about what a good client really is. And the professor was just really convincing on this one point, that if you adjust for income, America is still segregated. And if you adjust for income, real estate agents are still hesitant to serve people of color because of biases they have that are explicit or more likely that are unconscious. And that's when you just have to ask yourself, if you run a brokerage, if you are a real estate agent, have you been as eager to serve different parts of your community? Have you reached out to other parts of your community that aren't necessarily the immediate family, the immediate friends who you've sold to? So I wanted to talk about what we can do, and I just need to acknowledge that I know life is unfair, and capitalism is always going to favor rich people. That happens in every industry. Millionaires just get better service. They get a better table at the restaurant because they're rich. But the problem in our case is that giving the millionaire better service isn't just about a better table at a restaurant. It's about potentially a better life in a safer neighborhood with a different peer group and a different set of schools. And it's why poverty and class have problems that perpetuate themselves from one generation to the next. And if that seems like a bad rap, it isn't. Real estate is more important than buying a cell phone or a stapler. It has a social mission because we're helping people to a better life. And when we remember that, it just reminds us of our social obligations too. I feel so much pressure. Redfin is out in the public markets for its first year. There are people who probably wonder whether I'm too crunchy to really run the company, and I understand that. But you can't be so busy making money that you forget the whole reason we got into this racket in the first place. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to recruit more agents of color. The reason that lots of people of color don't want to go into real estate is because it's really hard to get a white person to hire a black real estate agent. White people go with people they know, they go with people they trust, and white people and black people often travel in different circles. So National Association of Realtors reports these numbers. Blacks are underrepresented by a factor of 3. We've done a little bit better than that. At Redfin, it's a factor of 2. But we've just been really mindful of our obligations to try to recruit more people of color so that we can represent more people of color. A white person can still represent a black consumer, but we also know what a difference it makes. It is just an amazing thing. You think you know how other people feel, but when they're actually in the room talking about a website feature to rate how competitive a neighborhood is, talking about how we score schools, talking about how we exclude or include different customers with our service model, it makes a huge difference. It is so easy to disregard a point of view when someone isn't representing it as forcefully as I've heard it because of the diversity at Redfin. So we're just working really hard to bring people who aren't in the industry into the industry and to diversify our ranks because it allows us to connect with a lot of different types of customers. The second thing that helps is just websites that show an agent's reviews and ratings. I'm not giving a plug for Redfin. Zillow does this too. I just didn't want to use their screenshot. MLSs are starting to publish reviews. Houston has a website like this. This is Kenny Whiteside. He's one of the top performing agents in the whole company. I also hesitated to put him up because I don't want you to recruit him. Recruit other people, not him. But I'm not sure that as many white people would have wanted to hire him if they couldn't see how good he was. They can see on a website just how many homes he sold in their neighborhood. They can see on a website 406 reviews of what customers have said about him. And they hire him like crazy. And that's something that I think would have been harder to do 10 or 20 years ago. So when we talk about reviews and things like that, I think we just need to remember that. The thing that has been a cause of grief within Redfin is that we serve customers with our own agents, our employees. But because we pay those employees a salary and healthcare benefits and all sorts of other incentives, we can't afford to sell people homes under $200,000 with our own agents. And an engineer at Redfin, who is a person of color, came to me and said, it really affects me that I'm working on a website that doesn't benefit my own family. And he pulled up on redfin.com a picture of their house and the price of that house, and then the recommendation to use a partner agent. Now we've worked the minimum price that we can afford to serve down from $400,000 to $200,000 over the past few years. But we had a meeting after these conversations and after reading this research, and we're gonna try to go down again to $150,000. And by the way, some of the people in the field who were in that meeting said, I wanna talk about agent safety. And I said, I'm not sure that's a fair objection to have. What are you saying about these neighborhoods? And then they reminded me, you're not the one going into those neighborhoods. So there might be abandoned houses, there might be more crime. And it was a really emotional discussion, but in the end, we decided that this is our mission. And this is why we got into this business, so we're just gonna do it. We're gonna try it in a few markets and see if we can roll it out everywhere. But I think all of us have price thresholds. We may not be as explicit as Redfin is about it, about the kinds of homes where we can make money, the price point that's our sweet spot. And we should just remember that that can be a good business model, but it has a really harsh social impact. But the thing I think is gonna make the most difference, and this is just my last slide, is just talking to our field organization about how it feels to be a home buyer of color, how it feels to be an agent of color. We're going to invite the professor out because most people actually are good. We just forget about it sometimes. We're so busy just trying to scratch out a living, just trying to get one damn sale to close, that we don't remember that there's a whole community counting on us, that we are the brokers of how an American city comes apart or comes together. So that's going to be in September. We're going to stream it. It's open to the public, but it'll be in Seattle, so I don't think many of you will come. Maybe we'll take it on the road. But mostly it's just for our own agents because we want to start by trying to do a better job ourselves. Thank you.
Glenn, you are awesome, as always. A hero in the industry that I got to give a big hug to.
Thanks, Brett.
Okay, so let's change subjects a little. Not that that's not important.
Okay.
It's as important as it gets. But you have some opinions about the real estate community in another way, holding its head high and tackling a few things that aren't that problematic and challenging, almost as if we overcomplicate it sometimes. Let's talk a little bit about that, kind of the reshuffling of the deck, but also how you kind of view that. There's some steps that can be taken that aren't that complex to have at least part of the industry face the changes a little more systematically.
Are you talking about serving diverse customers?
Yes. Well, no, I'm shifting gears from that.
Okay.
More about the things that we were originally going to talk about before you did the survey and said we're going to change the subject, and I said fantastic. So more about the changes in the industry that you've been talking about.
Well, I just think more money is coming into the industry. One of our board members has talked to me about the fact that he's a venture capitalist, and now almost every company that comes in to talk to him is raising money for a real estate startup. And we've wondered about the conflicts between being on our board and also seeing those deals. But it's just noteworthy because nobody wanted to do real estate for a long time. I think the amount of capital going into the space in 2012 was around $30 million, and it's estimated to be $3 billion this year.
3 billion.
That's true.
Billion.
I think so.
Yeah. Should these people be afraid, or is it an opportunity?
I feel both. I mean, I feel afraid, but I also feel like it's an opportunity. Obviously, there are companies that are going to be really well funded, but the reason I think it's an opportunity is for the longest time, the only companies that could get funded were media companies. If you were going to run ads for traditional real estate agents, that business was imminently fundable, and now almost all the companies that are getting funded are brokerages. And so I think there is capital for brokerages that want to develop a new way to buy or sell a home that have a better mousetrap. And so my guess is that there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the industry as that capital just works its way through the system.
And so the strong will survive and the weak will go away?
I mean, you're so Darwinian.
It's not Darwinian, it's just...
I think that
you can put it on a whiteboard. We'll bring one out for you if you want.
And some companies will be the buyer.
The what?
Some companies will be bought, and some companies will be the buyer. And so that's not.
Are you buying, by the way?
We're not buying any brokerages.
But what are you buying? Tech companies?
Well, when you go public, all these companies come out of the woodwork and try to sell themselves to you.
Yeah.
But so far, we've resisted.
Gotcha.
We haven't bought anything.
Because you're building your own technology, you don't need to buy it.
That, and we're probably a little stuck up about it.
Yeah.
You can get not invented here. But also just because we're tightwads.
Yeah.
Like we always say that we're paid by the sweat of an agent's brow or of a field person's brow. Like every, the flight that I took down here, a real estate agent had to work harder to pay for that flight. Was it worth it? I think so. But buying a company, that's a lot of money.
Were you in Southwest? Or
South by Southwest?
Airlines? Or did you?
No, it was Alaska.
Oh, okay.
But it was a middle seat.
Middle seat, good.
24B.
Love it. Real deal. What did you think about, I don't know if you heard Gary Keller, but he had you in a bucket in the transformation of real estate that if you wake up every morning trying to figure out how to get rid of real estate agents. Is that really your DNA?
I don't know where that
And
comes
I'm
from. I am real estate agents. Like, we employ several thousand real estate agents, and I think that I came into this industry with the idea that we could automate the whole process and eliminate the real estate agent. That was 14 years ago. And it hasn't just been a financial change or a customer service change. It's been a personal and genuine change that some of my best friends at the company are real estate agents. And I really believe in customer service. When we talk about how we compete with other companies, we talk about our service being better. And I think what's unfair about saying that I'd eliminate real estate agents, if I could, is that at some level, any business would. If Google could make software without software engineers, would it? I guess it would be more profitable, but the people who work there love software engineering. And I work at Redfin, and I love brokering real estate transactions, and I love the people who do it. They are working so hard. The idea that our software would have them sitting around in Adirondack chairs is just completely absurd to me. Like, we're trying to make their lives easier. We're trying to help them be more productive, but we are so far away from having them do nothing.
Did you say Adirondack chair?
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's just weird that you said that. That's okay, though. Go ahead.
Isn't it that chair where you...
Yeah, it is, totally, yeah. I'm sorry, you had a really important point, and I was totally random.
I could tell I was starting to
No, that's
wonder.
all right, it was good. So let me ask for the audience here, every broker owner in this room is thinking, oh my God, all these changes, maybe Inman's right, maybe it is a scary time, should I sell? And there's buyers out there. If you're a broker owner, do you sell or what do you do, and which choice do you make?
You just have to have a plan for the future.
Yep.
And if you can't come up with a plan, then somebody else will. But most of the brokers I talk to have a pretty good plan. They know what they need to do to serve their customers well. They know what they need to do to grow their business. I actually think that the balance of power between brokers and websites is shifting back in favor of brokers. Almost all the companies that are being funded right now don't really have a strong listing search site. That isn't even the premise of their business. And a lot of them are run by real estate brokers, not by software engineers.
Zillow, friend or foe to Glenn Kelman?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to think of them as Google and Redfin as Amazon, but I know now that they're selling houses in Phoenix, and they're just a really well-run company and a formidable competitor. And obviously, we run our own website, so we'd prefer people to come directly to that site rather than having to pay other websites for traffic, just because those costs are passed on to the consumer. We try to save money by having the customer come to us directly. And we keep some of that for ourselves to pay our agents, and we give some of that money to the customer. And so we just have to be careful with all of our marketing dollars.
So I was recently at the DOJ, FTC thing.
You did a great job. You were wearing that same, is that called a bolo tie?
No, I bought this bolo yesterday. But I got up there. It's not a role I was comfortable with. I don't like, journalists we don't like to cooperate too much with the government. But they asked me to do something, so as a citizen I did it. But when I got up there to give the lay of the land, I looked out and you were in the front row, and it made me feel good. And the reason why is because of why you're here. You have been a contrarian, you've been controversial, but you've contributed so much to the real estate industry. And I think over time, just like your Courage a Day delivering the talk you did, we are all so lucky to have you in the industry. And you're humble, you're not arrogant, you're contrarian, you say weird things over the years, but I love you to death, and I'm glad you're part of the industry.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Where do you want to see yourselves in the next 10 years, 20 years? Do you want to go with something that is established, or do you want to blaze a trail in an unknown? You're in a room where people are living their best lives. It's not about how much volume they do, but who they are as people. They just want you to win, and you want them to win. And that's what makes it feel right. It's not just a business. It's a place that I can call home.
The way we connect with others is changing. Here to open your mind to a new way of doing business. Here is Chelsea Pites with The Agent Marketer.
Good morning, Inmanville. I'm Chelsea Pites, and I teach people how to use the camera on their smartphones to build a powerful personal brand. Now, I am not a smartphone technology expert or even one in cameras, but I am one of the very few people who has researched and written about how cameras, in combination with our social media apps, have changed our behaviors. And specifically, how those cameras have changed the way in which we communicate, specifically in a screen-to-screen mobile environment. And now how they've changed how we build communities through our social networks, and most importantly, how those two things have actually changed